There was noise and hubbub at the ball. The girl went out onto the balcony to finally be in silence and sighed tiredly. It's so stuffy at balls, she thought. At least here on the terrace she can relax a little. Hearing the sound of the curtains opening, she turned around, but she was sure that she had definitely closed the curtain. What a rude man. Nekton, she thought, but when she noticed the girl calling her by name Duroy, she realized, no, it wasn't him. She asked Alice what happened. Lady Rimland apologized to Duroy. She wanted to talk to her in a calm environment. Alice, her best friend for 10 years, the one who is supposed to get engaged to Nekton, well, she really was reborn as a character from a novel. It was precisely the villain, Alice, that Duroy began to say. She constantly said this, and suddenly she thought that it was not that she loved Nekton. Alice interrupted her friend. She knew it would sound strange, but to be honest, she had prophetic dreams. "And what?" Duroy asked, taken aback, as her friend grabbed her hands and exclaimed, "Duke Edgar is a cruel villain." Durua froze, confused, and frowned, asking what. She quickly realized that she had been reborn as a character from a novel. She had vague memories of her past life, but she began to find some kind of clues. Her curly, bright red hair and her piercing gaze began to arouse suspicion. Thought Duroy, looking at herself for the umpteenth time. She looks like a typical villain, but at the time, she somehow didn't attach any importance to it. However, when she first met Nekton, she realized that her suspicions were not in vain. People were talking about a young Duke Edgar, thought Duroy, sounded somehow familiar. And suddenly, as if from an open book, clearer memories began to flow into my head. In the novel she read before she died, the main character had Ed in his name, and on the cover of the book he had black hair. The girl was convinced of her guess when she once went to an estate and met a girl. The lady's name was Alice Momentum, at least that's how she first introduced herself to the mistress. The girl, laughing nervously, was now firmly convinced that this was the world of a novel. From that time on, Duroy began to sort through her memories of the main character, Alice. Baron Momentum kidnapped her and left her to fend for herself, and the girl had a difficult childhood. But when Alice grew up, an elderly woman came to her and said that in fact she was the daughter of Duke Rimlad. The Baron was unrequitedly in love with the Duchess of Rimland. He went mad with love and convinced himself that the Duchess loved him too. He became furious when he learned that the Duchess had become pregnant by the Duke, and that she had delivered the Duchess of Romeland's child. Even then, the Baron threatened her, and immediately after her birth, he staged her death and kidnapped her. She begged him to forgive her. But soon the secret of Alice's birth was revealed, and the misfortunes of her life ended. In the end, Alice took revenge on the Baron's family and found love. She was a minor character, Walrose, the rose who tormented Alice. And once Duroy Valrose even risked an attempt on Alice's life. And the main character, whom she remembered as Ed, is actually Edgar. He exposed Rose's crime and punished her. How can she avoid execution? She thought with a heavy sigh. However, the future can still be changed. Eureka! Maybe she could avoid execution by getting closer to the main character. The idea came to her. Who knows? Maybe she can become the main character, and full of confidence, she decided to get closer to Edgar. He is the third son, but he will become the next Duke. People whispered whether the rumors were true that the host of the ball was not his father. This is her chance. Isn't it the best moment to get closer to him when he is sitting there alone? The girl thought. Yes, it was selfish, but if it would help her avoid execution, she was willing to be shameless and forced a smile. Rose asked if he was Nekton Edgar. He knew her, reminding her that they had met at an event last year. "She is the second daughter of the Marquis of Valrose," the boy asked. "She doesn't even need to introduce herself." Rose admired and praised his good memory. He simply looked at the girl for a long time and then asked if she had any magical items with her, which she asked no. Rose wondered why he suddenly asked about this, and looking at Edgar, she noticed his lilac eyes. How the boy communicated here, that he would like to communicate with her again, Valrose. The girl was taken aback. The young Duke said that he would be glad if she would come to see him at the mansion after the ball. The girl, of course, was confused, but she agreed because this was her goal after all. She was so tempted by Nekton's invitation that from that moment on she began to visit the Duke's mansion frequently. But she gave up her attempts to become the main character after 3 months, and the reason for that was, it wasn't even his silence, as it might have seemed at first glance, but then Duroy noticed how nice the weather was. And then the boy insistently asked for a mug, pouring tea on the table. "Oh, the mug has fallen over." Edgar said with the smile of a parasitic little brat. In her opinion, he did it on purpose, and the boy said that in recent days he had been feeling weak in his hands and apologized. He felt unwell. Another day he spoke and asked her to help him, and Rose did not refuse. And it was hard for her, but this happened all the time. Sometimes he wanted her to catch something for him so that she could look at him closer. She didn't understand it then, but Nekton, instead of directly telling her to get lost, politely hinted. And a few months later, when she brought him a birthday present, thinking that the brooch would suit him, Edgar admitted that he didn't think she would give him anything and said he was glad. She was enchanted, the girl explained, with a purple haze hovering inside her. The boy looked at the shiny brooch without much interest, and Deroy waited for a reaction. And suddenly he acted like a complete bastard. With a loud gurgling sound, the girl's gift sank to the bottom of the lake. "Oh, I'm sorry," Edgar said falsely, upset, slipping his hands and smiling, asking if she could get it. What had he just done, she thought in shock, now realizing Nekton Edgar had shown his true self. Black magic is a power that allows you to feel other people. True black magicians are born from parental hatred. Such a person is especially sensitive to negative emotions and can influence the human mind. This person, the black magician, is none other than Nekton Edgar. Sitting at the ball, he heard each of them, every rumor and discussion that came from their lips. And he felt hostility towards him. People said, it didn't look like the ball was organized by the Duke and Patricia. Suddenly a girl appeared in front of him. She said hello and asked if he knew her. "She is the second daughter of the Marquis of Valrose," the boy asked. "She doesn't even need to introduce herself." Rose admired and praised his good memory. This girl, Edgar thought warily. What was wrong with her? This was the first time he felt nothing. He found out that she didn't have any magical items with her and thought that nothing could protect her from the effects of black magic. Trying to read a person by facial expressions and gestures is quite fascinating. He said that he would like to talk to her more. He decided to use magic to gain her favor. He still didn't feel anything, but he thought it worked. A few months later, Rose asked him why he still called her Walrose, as they had become closer. So they spent almost every day together, getting to know each other and eating delicious food. This time too, watching the girl's reaction, the dark magician suddenly grinned. Estella noticed this and immediately exclaimed. He smiled and asked. He smiled. "Yes, Nekton." "No," he answered embarrassedly. Rose laughed. Funny, Edgar thought. He only used magic that day, but Walrose keeps coming. No, he thought painfully. She doesn't like him. It's only because of black magic, so that he gets closer to someone. He muttered as if ordering her not to come next week. No, not from now on. But Walrose interrupted his monologue by suddenly appearing in front of his face. "Why?" she asked. "Something happened, the boy answered uncertainly. "It will be his birthday." "That's great," she exclaimed, and asked why he was asking her not to come. He answered simply, with difficulty formulating the reason. She had heard rumors at the ball that the Duke was not his biological father, and that people in the mansion were constantly looking at him sideways. "What?" the girl exclaimed indignantly. "This is very rude," he said, hoping that Walrose would understand. Time will pass, and one day they will recognize and accept him, but until then he did not want to draw attention to himself. But contrary to his expectations, the girl asked Nekton not to worry, saying he could count on her. And a week later, she brought him a cufflink as a gift, the same color as his eyes, thinking that it would suit him. The boy's heart was pounding. He always understood people's feelings as his own. But right now, he didn't understand what he was feeling, but he knew for sure that he was angry, and there was a pain in his chest. He said he was glad she brought a gift, but it was purple, the color he hated the most. Even though it was dangerous, he was not one to care about the feelings of others, so he threw the gift away. The girl was shocked by this reaction. He asked her to get it, thinking that such a shock should bring her out of hypnosis. "Everything will be fine." "Of course," Valrose replied irritably, since he was so clumsy. What Edgar asked, taken aback, but then the girl quickly headed towards the pond. "Hey!" the young Duke called after her, asking her to wait, but then there was the sound of splashing water, followed by silence. "Walrose?" the boy asked in fear, freezing, and then, worried, he rushed towards Walrose. Bubbles appeared on the surface of the water, and suddenly a girl emerged with a splash. Without even expecting him to extend a helping hand, Darua climbed onto the shore herself. And, having cleared her throat, she told him to hold on, handing him the cufflink that she had taken from the bottom. The boy stared at the cufflink in her hand, stunned, still in shock that she had obeyed him. She picked it up. "Hold it," said the girl. But seeing no reaction, she smiled and said, "Oh yes, that's right." It was then that Edgar realized that the constantly smiling Rose was actually one of those. "Who treats people the way they treat her?" "Oh," Rose said irritably, walking away. "It also slipped out of my hand. I'm sorry." So she left the boy, offended and disappointed, and there was a pain in his chest. At that moment, he thought that pushing Walrose away was what he really wanted. She hoped that the hypnosis imposed on Valrose could not be removed so easily from that day on. He came to the lake from time to time. Edgar couldn't shake off the worry. The words she repeated after him were so deeply embedded in his head. And yet, something moves him, and so he entered the reservoir, sank to the bottom in search of the cufflink. The sparkle of the enchanted stone on the cufflink did not disappear under the water, which is why Edgar was able to find it. And having pulled it out from the bottom, he coughed and surfaced. Having already returned to the room and having put the gift in the valuable box, he suddenly thought about why he took it out. There was a pain in his chest. He thought that he would never see Valrose Duroy again. At least that's what he thought, but a few days later, at a noisy ball, among the crowd of adults and children, his gaze found Walrose. The girl woke up with the thought that this was the world of the novel that she had read in a past life. From the content, she remembered that Edgar promised to marry Alice. He learned of the villain's assassination attempt on Alice and executed her, so it turned out that now she is that very villain. That's why, in order to survive, Valrose decided to get closer to Nekton. But what happened yesterday, damn, and if he didn't want to see her anymore, she didn't want to go back to the Duke's mansion. Moreover, she became friends with Alice, but she was still worried that he could actually execute her. Nekton's true face was a real revelation to her, and she felt that she had to at least pretend to be his friend. But a few days later, her mother forced her to go to the ball. Rose didn't like crowded places. Besides, she was sickened by the thought of meeting Nekton. "Oh, here he is. Remember the sun. Here is a ray." So hypocritical, Rose thought with disappointment. Disgusting. But then she suddenly wondered who that was next to him. And, looking again in the direction of the young Duke and the girl, she recognized Cheryl Bournain in her. One day she overheard Cheryl talking about Edgar. The servants in the mansion were treating the young Duke Nekton with disdain. Laughing, she told the other children that he had no friends, and that if she was kind to him, he would probably obey her. She was furious at what she heard, but she was unable to go out to them, even though she had other intentions, but she considered it a good moment to act. She didn't do it out of bad intentions, but Bournain simply decided to play a trick on him. As each other's eyes met, Rose swallowed and wondered what he was thinking. She swallowed and thought. But then Edgar demonstratively turned away from her, continuing his conversation with another girl. For some reason, this sight made my heart tremble. Rose finally arrived at the Nekton mansion. Perhaps, she thought, Edgar wasn't so bad. But he didn't approach her at the ball, because he didn't know what kind of relationship they had, even if she hadn't known that it was the world of a romance. Her intentions would have been the same. Finally, she found him and came up to greet Nekton. He didn't answer, but Walrose's soul was uneasy she couldn't leave him alone. Coming closer, she asked what he was reading. The book seemed expensive, and it was somehow awkward. But the boy still handed her the book, saying it was old. "And what was it about?" Rose asked. When she opened the book, she saw an insect inside it, and she was so scared that she threw the book aside. At the same time, the book fell into the lake, and Walrose herself stumbled, trying to hold on to the book. So she fell into the water, sinking to the bottom. She winced from the unpleasant sensation in her leg. But suddenly she noticed a splash of water and rising bubbles of oxygen near her, and then Edgar swam out of them. After looking at Walrose underwater, the boy grabbed her hand and pulled her up with him. Having swum out of the lake, the boys came to their senses, coughing. Sighing, Edgar asked the girl if she had a hobby of falling into other people's lakes. "Oh," she answered in surprise and was about to thank him, but suddenly she couldn't hold back a laugh. She laughed playfully at his appearance and thought joyfully that Nekton had helped her. "Noisy," he said sheepishly, looking like a wet puppy, and also sharp-tongued cutie. Duroy thought that the mental anguish and awkwardness had instantly disappeared, but not for long. Since then, Nekton has tested her patience on numerous occasions. Once, she treated him to a high-quality tea, and he gave it to a servant. He chose Cheryl Bournain as his partner for the ball, and she chose him. Didn't he really understand that he was simply being used? And so, they had already known each other for several years, and he still called her by her last name, Valrose. They spent a lot of time together, a long-standing relationship, but for Nekton, it meant little. She was intoxicated by the fact that she was the only one who knew his true face. However, everything was just an illusion, and she had long lost faith in him. And she also began to unconsciously distance herself from him. The problem arose sometime after the debutante ball. Many people thought she was in love with Nekton. Because of the engagement rumors, she was never asked to dance. Maybe it was because she spent almost all her time with him. The girl suddenly thought she wasn't particularly worried about marriage. But when her older sister Ely marries and becomes the Marquise of Valrose, she will have to live in the family mansion. And then one day she received her first marriage proposal, which is surprising because it was Aaron Claymore. The same minor character who loved Alice, she never thought that she would receive an engagement proposal from him. All this went against the original plot. Maybe he loves her, and not Alice. He seemed like a good person to her, so soon she accepted his proposal. Meanwhile, Alice arrived in the capital and was accepted into the Rimland family. In the original, she was punished for her crimes, Aaron was in love with Alice, and Nekton, of course, married Alice. She thought that she would not be executed and, let's say, Aaron would not fall in love with Alice. But Nekton was destined to be with Alice. After all, like her, they had already discussed their wedding, but what the hell is Alice talking about now? Nekton is a villain, a prophetic dream. Duroy did not know that the main character had such an ability, but Alice continued to recount the dream. A little later, Edgar would go looking for her and would be a little emotional, which sounded like a lie, because Nekton was always calm. Most likely, he will be looking for her, not Rose. I heard that they are engaged, and as she has already said more than once, she really does not have feelings for him. The girl understood that her friend thought that she would hurt her if she told about the engagement, but Alice exclaimed that she had not even thought of hiding it from her. She had barely finished speaking when the curtains opened again, and Edgar asked if he had disturbed her. The girls who had just been discussing this ray of light were on edge, not knowing how to react to Nekton's appearance now. Without asking permission, approaching footsteps were heard amidst the ladies' silence. Coming closer, Nekton's gaze fell on Valrose, and he asked his old friend if she had gossiped about him, Nekton Edgar. He told his chosen one, Miss Rimland, that he would like to speak with Walrose alone. Alice looked at Edgar with irritation, but didn't even think about staying with them. "See you later, Duroy," she said, quickly slipping from the balcony into the ballroom. "Alice?" she asked in surprise. The girl warily wondered what had happened to the atmosphere, and what about prophetic dreams? Weren't they in love with each other, like in the novel? A sudden voice came over his ear. "Wow, Valrose. I can't believe she sank into the oils next to him." Duroy jumped back in fear and immediately stumbled, stepping on her own scarf. She spun around, looking back over the railing, afraid of falling off the balcony. As soon as she screamed, Nekton caught her, preventing her from falling back. Then, meeting Edgar's gaze, my heart began to beat treacherously faster in my chest. "Move away," she said, pushing the guy, wondering if he also thought she was in love with him. "But that's not true." She winced and asked what he wanted to talk about. The young duke said his engagement would take place next month and asked his friend if she would come. "It means engagement," she thought, and said, "She will send a gift. If she comes, she will be the star of his evening." Walrose was his precious friend, so he thought she should be present, but the girl replied that her presence would expose Aaron to dirty gossip. And sighing with displeasure, she asked what kind of precious friend he was. Was he drunk? Edgar replied, "Sounds good." But not wanting to continue the conversation, the girl explained that she was leaving. "Aaron," mumbled Nekton. And suddenly, something clicked in his head. Grabbing his friend, embracing her, he asked if Claymore was dear to her. Duroy's heart was pounding, but her mind was unyielding, and so she turned around warily. Pressing the girl to himself, without letting go, Nekton persistently asked if she was more precious than him, with whom she had spent 10 years. Pushing him away, Durua said indignantly, "Aaron calls her Durua, unlike him." She thought he was testing her again and said there was no point in comparing a friend and a fiancé. After saying these words, she quickly ran from the terrace back into the ballroom, leaving Edgar outside alone. When Valrose left, Nekton clenched his fist in irritation and then touched the railing. "Valrose," he said, and suddenly the dark forces broke through, the fence cracked. Nekton destroyed it in 2 counts, lost in thought, and the cries of crows echoed throughout the area. At the same time, at the ball, Valrose drank the wine in 1 gulp, winced, and sighed. How tense. Suddenly, with a groan, Lady Walrose called out to the girl in her company and asked if she was alone today. Why Cheryl of all people? Rose thought with disappointment as the girl noticed she was without a partner today. Darua noticed the man next to her. It was Logix Elford. He was constantly following her. Smiling, Cheryl said, "His lordship is going to get engaged to someone else." She felt sorry for her. But then Rose said, "Today she is here with her fiancé." "What?" Lady Cheryl asked, stunned, and Duroy replied he had urgent business to attend to, so he left early. And, she continued reproachfully, it was a pity that she had not succeeded in becoming his lordship's bride. Since they were close friends, he told her that she had proposed to him. "What is she talking about?" Cheryl asked fearfully, looking around, hoping that no one had heard her words. While Cheryl looked at her with resentment, Duroy thought that Nekton had spoiled her mood. She also used Nekton as an excuse to quarrel with her. The girl was already in no mood to stay at the ball any longer when suddenly her name was called. But, to his surprise, that man turned out to be Aaron Claymore, a minor character in the novel. And her fiancé, Duroy, asked in surprise, "Didn't he say that they needed to leave immediately?" Yes, he needed to hurry, but he thought that he shouldn't leave her alone. Darua thanked him. She was just about to return. Suddenly, Lady Bournain intervened in the conversation and asked Lady Walrose if this was her fiancé, Sir Aaron Claymore. "Yes, that is so," Duroy replied. "But," she continued hesitantly, "Sir Claymore said he was not interested in marriage." She wants to discuss this publicly, she thought, looking at Aaron, and he said nobly that he had not yet known love. "But," Cheryl exclaimed, laughing nervously, "Duroy told Lady Bournain that she hoped to speak to her next time." With the loud clatter of hooves, Valrose and Claymore headed out of the estate. The story with Aaron was also not as brilliant as it might seem at first glance. He once said that he has a loved one, which means that nothing will work out between them. The girl still couldn't understand Aaron's words. One day he came to her and hesitantly fell on his knees, asking Walrose for forgiveness, asking if she could refuse the wedding. "What?" the girl asked, exclaiming in amazement. The guy standing in front of her admitted that he already had a loved one. It can't be, the girl thought, horrified already. Maybe Alice. She's new in the capital, and the letters didn't say anything about it. Duroy thought about it. She didn't remember anything like that happening in the novel. Aaron was silent, waiting for a reaction. "If that's the case, then why you?" she asked. He interrupted and replied that he had already told his parents that he did not want to marry her, but they did not listen, and asked them to forgive him for the trouble. The girl asked if his parents were against their wedding. Aaron explained that they didn't even know his beloved. This girl is the one he cannot marry, the one, Rose thought, whom he cannot take as his wife. In the evening, he was going to tell his parents the truth, and again apologized for the inconvenience. What could be the reason, she thought, if they don't have different social positions, Alice isn't married yet, and their families aren't feuding? So maybe it's not Alice, she thought, and immediately asking him to wait, she asked if he would back off if another marriage was scheduled. Aaron froze and replied, "We'll have to. They've already done it," she thought, and asked, "With Alice Rimland?" Hearing the name she called, he turned around with a shudder, looking at Duroy in shock. And then the girl realized she was right. He didn't know how she had guessed, but it wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to marry her, Aaron said, but Rose didn't understand how that had happened. He asked, "But she also can't marry her beloved, she and Edgar." "No," Rose cut off, "not at all." Thinking how unbearable it was, she asked him if he thought she wanted to refuse him the Razi of Nekton. If this rumor is true and Nekton and Alice are lovers, then this is the worst possible development. She will be in trouble. And so she immediately asked Sir Claymore if he would betroth her, which he asked in astonishment. The girl explained that she didn't need a whole wedding, but just an engagement. It was unrealistic for Walrose to avoid Alice Rimland. Amidst the clatter and clicking, Rose thought she had learned after the engagement that Aaron and Alice rarely saw each other, because he was avoiding her, and yet she couldn't stop wondering why. But then Aaron interrupted her reasoning and explained that he was lying, and that he had no business today. And, Duroy asked him in a drawn-out voice why he had lied, the guy admitted that he had not wanted to go there. "He doesn't like to accompany her?" the girl asked. "No," he exclaimed. "He just didn't want to meet Lady Rimland." Rose asked why he was avoiding her, yet she wanted to know why he couldn't marry his beloved. Suddenly, the carriage stopped with a roar, and the carriage driver announced that they were there. Arriving at the Valrose mansion, Aaron helped the girl out of the carriage. "Duroy," Aaron called out to her confidently, but then he began mumbling incoherently again. but Duroy simply kissed him, interrupting him from 1,000 unnecessary words. And running home, she thanked him for giving her a ride and wished him a safe journey back. Erin watched the girl run away with pity and embarrassment. "Welcome home, miss," her butler greeted her. The girl asked how her family was. "My lord will be late because of work, and the lady has laid down to rest," the friendly man announced. "And also, Lady Rimland is already waiting for her in the living room. Alice is here," she exclaimed in surprise. Alice asked Duroy where she was from. She told her that she would contact her herself. Seeing her friend, Alice jumped up. The girl apologized, but she urgently needed to talk to her. And suddenly she uttered a familiar question. Aaron Claymore means something to her. Duroy froze. "More important than the one with whom she spent more than 10 years? Alice asked, the girl asked, taken aback. A memory flashed through her mind of how a couple of hours ago, Necton Edgar had asked her exactly the same question. "What?" Rose said warily, and even somewhat fearfully. Alice told Duroy what she had already said. She sees prophetic dreams. Walrose did not know that the main character had such an ability. Had she always had it, Duroy wondered anxiously. It wasn't in the original story, but since it had changed, so had Alice. But when it happened, she asked her friend if she could see the future. Alice was serious and explained that not everything, just fragments, everything in her dreams comes true. But her fate seemed to be covered in fog. She couldn't see what it was about, thought Duroy. Fog. Is it because it doesn't follow the original plot? Alice knew that Necton would say that, and that he would be angry and would even break the railing. "What?" Duroy asked in shock. "Was he so angry after talking to her that he did this?" Walrose asked her friend warily if she was sure it was true. Dreams usually are. "That's right," Alice answered sharply. "She'll even say more. It was he who threw her gift into the lake, and also gave the tea that she bought him to the servant. And now she wants to break all ties with him," said Alice. "But all this was so long ago," said Duroy. She had dreams before they met. Even though she couldn't see her, she felt her presence. Alice grabbed the girl by the hand and asked her to believe her, but her hand trembled treacherously. "Necton Edgar is a cruel villain," she said so, remembering, she thought warily. Then, worried, she asked Rose why she called Necton a villain. Before answering, Alice rose from her chair and walked over to the window. "Necton," Alice said with a sigh. "He seized power as soon as he grew up and asked her friend if he knew how. His family was tired, so they forced Necton and his 2 older brothers to go abroad," Duroy suggested. "You're wrong," said Alice. "You've brainwashed them, the Duke and everyone else." Walrose already understood where this was all leading, but she doubted that she wanted to hear it. "Necton Edgar," Alice finished the sentence. "Necton Edgar brainwashed everyone, stuck in the prostration of her own thoughts," the girl thought. All this time they were trying to get through to her, and when people finally shouted, Duroy came to her senses. "Yes?" the girl asked awkwardly. The sister asked Duroy where she would like to stay. "What is it?" she asked. "Did something happen between her and Sir Claymore?" "No, nothing," the girl answered. "L.A., don't poke your nose in," said the woman, and turned to the younger one. Duroy listened to her mother. She would not advise her to go to the Imperial Ball. "The railing was broken," Mother said, causing Duroy to freeze in shock. "Sir Edgar might not know until someone got hurt." "Necton," the girl asked in horror. "Yes," the woman answered. She thought that he would be her fiancé. She had waited so long for their wedding, but instead he became engaged to Lady Rimland. The gentleman told his wife that she was too harsh with Sir Claymore, my dear. And the noble lady knew this. She was just upset about it. The butler asked the miss if she was really in good health, such things, everything was fine, they would help her, said Duroy. And then she asked the butler not to tell about this either to her parents or to Ely, but to my lady. She thought that the butler Daniel would try to stop her. She wanted to get the memory elixir. This is a potion that spins memories. It restores the forgotten and brings thoughts into order. She had already tried to remember the novel, but had given up because she wasn't sure the elixir would work on her past life. And despite this, she could not remember the end of the novel because she had not read it. She remembered that she wanted to buy it, but when it became cheaper. And now, to buy a book, she would need half of her savings. The day after the ball, I thought she was drunk, and that's why she behaved rudely with Sir Claymore. The man said she looked good after the ball. It's all because she fell asleep in the carriage, and after she opened her eyes, Aaron was already pale. She begged him to get her this elixir. Since everything was so, the butler agreed. The girl sighed. Because of Aaron, he quickly gave in. Now she could breathe a sigh of relief. The elixir would already be with her, but there was still something that was unclear. then Alice assured her. But Walrose could not understand why Alice's visions came true. Duroy perceived him as the most eligible bachelor, but he turned out to be a villain. She is in shock. The answer probably lies somewhere in her memory. And she also needed to meet Alice and Nekton again, she reasoned, closing her eyes. It was pouring heavily outside when suddenly the guy's name was called. Yes, Valrose, Nekton asked. She thought they were already close, but it was not so. The girl asked, offended and indignant, why he wasn't at her birthday party. He said he would think about it but didn't promise to come. Everything was as if nothing had happened. She always called him by name, but No, she was already shouting that she was always going to him. But Nekton, he never visited her. Walrose really thought they were friends, but a heavy downpour started outside. Edgar mockingly asked what she wanted to hear from him, and Duroy knew that nothing would change. But I just wanted him to eat well. Valrose woke up to the sound of thunder and gasped with a start. Duroy wondered why she suddenly had such a dream. It was because of the rain. She was angry there. This was indeed one of the few grievances she had against him. And she no longer hoped for anything. The girl stretched, yawning, when there was a knock on the door. The girl thought it was time for lunch and asked Nighty to come in. After Milady's permission, the door creaked, and Edgar, who had entered, said apologetically, but he was not Nighty. Valrose looked at the guy who entered her room in shock. And after a short silence, Nekton greeted Valrose with a smile. She was about to ask how he got there, but then she saw another figure in the doorway. Nighty entered the room quietly. And without departing from her duties, she asked my lady what kind of tea she preferred. Darjeeling, Duroy replied, for Nighty, duty always came first. It was unlikely that she would have let anyone in without an invitation. Edgar Nekton had gotten to her too. Duroy knew him well enough to say that he was not like that, but it must be noted that he always behaved like that. And she didn't even notice what it was, Nekton, she asked. He never came. And he didn't even want to have any business here, Edgar said. He asked her to forgive him for his words about her fiancé. Duroy chuckled irritably and asked if he was apologizing. He shouldn't have. It wasn't the first time he had insulted someone. And she became kinder, smiling, Nekton noticed. What is he talking about? The girl asked. The guy explained that she didn't even scold the servant who let him in just like that. Duroy was worried about how he knew about Nighty's mistake. It seemed as if he was reading her mind. Nervously, she said that she would not scold the servants in front of the guests, thinking that he had never rushed here before, so why would he come? Yet Nekton was surprised by Valrose's leniency. The girl could not understand what he had in mind. Looking at him, Duroy asked what he wanted. That night of the ball, she was meeting with Lady Rimland, right? Asked Nekton, and Duroy exclaimed indignantly, was he following her? He asked what they were talking about, but after Duroy shouted at him, he fell silent without answering. Duroy was nervous. She didn't understand whether he came because he suspected that Alice knew everything or why. Suddenly, he showed up to find out from her what Alice had said, and if so, what he was going to do. Turning away, she muttered that she didn't have to tell him this. Nekton was angered by this, but he didn't show it, continuing to watch silently. Walrose knew Nekton Edgar's secret and suspected that was why he had come. Milady thanked Nighty for bringing her tea and began to drink it. There was still a thunderstorm outside the window. Having tried the tea, Nekton said it was not bad. Duroy didn't answer, continuing to stare at the guy. Walrose, said Nekton. She is the most valuable person to him. If she doesn't want to talk, then don't. But he had a tea party next week and he hoped she would come. Duroy indignantly asked if he had forgotten what she had said recently. But Nekton knew that she didn't want any rumors, so she didn't have to worry about that. He will also call her fiancé and Lady Rimland. It will be great if they dispel the rumors. Okay, Edgar said. He's leaving, Rose thought with a mixture of hope and doubt, never having received an answer. But before leaving, he froze and asked her not to scold the maid. He had arrived as a guest of Ely Valrose. What? The girl asked in surprise. Eli called him. Nekton said that there was nothing to worry about. Walrose, he said, reaching into his pocket. Edgar admitted that he actually didn't really like calling her that. What is he talking about? The girl thought warily. He quickly came closer, saying, it's not like she knew. Here Nekton circled the girl with his arms, accompanied by indignant cries from Valrose, who tried to push him away. Having let go of Duroy, he took a step back and, smiling, congratulated her on her engagement. And now it was time for him to go, and with these words he left the room. The girl carefully looked at the pendant with an amethyst on it that Nekton had given her. Duroy ran to her sister as soon as the rain stopped and asked why she invited him. Well, Ely replied, as funny as it may sound, he was the first to help her. Help with what? Asked the little sister. The eldest, putting aside her work on the documents, said that Terops had big plans for them. Terops Dante? Duroy asked, frowning. Yes, they had a wedding planned for the next month, her sweet and at the same time hateful groom. After marrying her, the girl said irritably, he planned to seduce her. What? Duroy asked, stunned and feeling something disgusting, hoping that she was joking. First to gain power through marriage, and then to find a beautiful mistress, he let slip about this other love. That's why you need to know your partner inside and out, and that's the answer to why she was only engaged for 7 years. Naturally, she wouldn't have fallen for that pretty face to spend so much time on something like that, but even the thought made her feel sick. The family had already rejected him. Duroy asked Elle how she was, not even knowing how she could help her. It was good that it was not too late, and they found out. Elle asked enthusiastically. She was just worried about her older sister, oh Dudu. Durua sheepishly asked her sister not to call her that, and laughingly thought that Elle could sometimes be annoying technically. She would be older if you counted her past life. She never said what he helped with, Durua said, and her sister replied that she had already heard rumors about Terops, and the Count helped to find out more. Duroy's heart sank. Nekton helped, but why? I remembered Alice's words about Nekton Edgar brainwashing everyone. Then he visited the house of the Marquise of Valrose. What if the rumors about Therops are untrue? What if Nekton is the culprit and he did everything? What is it? Duroy asked her sister, and having come to her senses, the girl responded, yes, yes. Fool, she told herself. She had already gone too far. What benefit did it give him to break up Ely's wedding? As Elle asked Duru, she loves her fiancé. Well, the girl decided to tell the truth. Not to say that this is so, they have an agreement. Elle asked her not to look at her parents' blessing and position. She was not like her, and she wanted her to be happy. The reason she got engaged to Aaron was because she could easily break it off. He just wanted to avoid other proposals. Aaron uses the pain of separation after their breakup as an excuse not to take anyone as a wife, and she needed to somehow protect herself from Nekton. So who is he, the main character or the villain? Duroy had already told her that it was okay. But Nady continued to whine and beg my lady to forgive her. She didn't know how it happened. He arrived as a guest of Elle, Duroy said, but the maid still guaranteed that such a thing would not happen again. Okay, she answered, thinking, Nady is so demanding of herself, she made a mountain out of a molehill about yesterday. It wasn't her mistake. She was more worried about Nekton's behavior. Everything proved that he was hiding something. By the way, Needy reported that she received a letter from Sir Claymore. Durua thanked him. She received an answer whether he was invited to Nekton's tea party. He was also invited, if she had not yet given her consent. He asked to send a message before midnight so that he would not come. He would go if he didn't get anything. Duroy was sure that he wouldn't go because of Alice. Didn't he know that she was also invited? She was in such a hurry to send a reply to Aaron that she completely forgot to write to Alice. Now it would be impolite to ask her. She asked Needy if Alice had answered. The maid said Lady Rimland went to Earnhardt. She is not feeling well. Momentum is where Alice grew up before she was discovered to be from the Rimland family. And Alice's childhood years are a secret. Rod Rimland told people that their daughter was vacationing in a country house. And when she got better, she returned home. No questions arose, because this family knows how to convince. This means that she is the only one, besides the Count and Countess of Rimland, who knows about Alice's previous life, and she went there. It was not difficult for her to return. That place is secret, but she was told to tell her something. Durua thought that if she went there, Alice and the others would recognize her. Maybe she should pretend to be someone, she thought, and Nady also wanted to return the shawl that my lady had given her. Having felt the shawl, she realized that it was her shawl, but suddenly she froze. There was a piece of paper boiling inside the shawl. Nady said she would go. Okay, Walrose replied. As soon as the door slammed, Duroy decided to check the shawl, unfolded it, and indeed saw a piece of paper attached to a pin. Without wasting any time, she began to open the package, and suddenly I discovered that the text was written by Alice. Never, no matter what, go to this evening, she wrote. The carriage was rushing somewhere at a rapid pace. Momentum, she did not want to return here of her own free will. Alice was serious, she was too tense. When she was thinking about how to avoid Edgar's tea party, this place was the first one she thought of. She still didn't understand why Baron Momentum and her sisters were openly hostile to her. But it wasn't the sisters who were the real hell, but Baron Momentum, the man who was previously considered her father. When his crimes were discovered, he fled, and she suffered even more because she was a burden. To prevent even more hatred towards her, Elisa Momentum had to smile, even if it was hard. She was smart enough to survive, and then she met Duroy. The little girl wanted to eat, but suddenly she heard a cry urging the horse on the carriage was racing straight towards Asisa. The rumble of the carriage was approaching the girl, but the coachman saw her in time and stopped the horses. The carriage door opened and a servant helped the girl with fiery hair out. Asisa saw her dimly, but she definitely recognized her. She had dreamed of her 3 days ago, but in her dreams she could not see her face and did not hear her voice. Alice knew that this girl would give her a chance at happiness. They say that the more vivid the dream, the more likely it is to come true. She first saw Duroy in a prophetic dream. But then, noticing Alice, Duroy ran up to her and asked if she was wounded, which Alice asked in surprise. She asked the servant who was the owner of the Earnhardt estate, but she had never heard that name before, but for some reason this girl seemed familiar. The girl introduced herself, said her name, Duroy Valrose. She came from the capital and asked what her name was. The girl bowed awkwardly and introduced herself to my lady by her name, Elisa Moment. Alice Momentum, Duroy asked thoughtfully. She already knows about it, Alice was worried. What should she do if dreams don't come true? My heart was beating wildly, waiting for answers and reactions from my new acquaintance. And the next moment, Duroy looked at Alice again with admiration and surprise, and she stepped back in surprise. Alice was already wondering why Duroy had been so surprised at that moment. The coachman informed Milady that they had arrived and, opening the doors, helped the girl down. That's right, Alice hid under her wig and hat. She also used a magic pendant that clouded a person's consciousness so that neither the Baron nor anyone else would recognize her. In order to avoid going to Edgar's tea party, I had to go somewhere far away. No matter how much she disliked the place, she chose Earnhardt because she wanted to see it. At this time, Duroy could not find a place for herself. The wait was oppressive, and she wandered restlessly from corner to corner. The servant watching her was already starting to feel dizzy and his eye was twitching. He should have finished training and was already on his way here. Come on, hurry up. Finally, there was a knock at the door, and Duroy immediately called Aaron. Duroy, the guy asked in surprise as he entered. Why her? But the girl interrupted him. She hadn't answered him yet, Aaron asked, taken aback. Was she talking about Edgar? No. Hearing Duroy's answer, a weight fell from her soul and she sighed with relief. Aaron asked his assistant to leave him alone with Lady Walrose, and the boy obeyed. They settled down to talk more comfortably, and he asked what had happened, what was causing such a fuss about the letter. Even if that were the case, she still wouldn't have said that, he asked, and Duroy explained, it was a serious matter. Aaron didn't understand what she was trying to say. It didn't matter, she replied. She just asked her to send him his rejection letter. Although no, it would be better to wait until the evening, the guy asked, but wouldn't that be a bit rude? She couldn't tell what Alice had warned her about. It could cost her her life, and she simply said that Nekton should be feared. Aaron hesitated, but then nodded, saying he understood. Well, since the matter was decided, she said that she would go, but then Aaron called out to Duroy. Today he was served an excellent dinner, and he asked if she would like to join him. What? Walrose thought, taken aback. He wants to have lunch with her. Duroy agreed to dine with her fiancé, but the dinner passed in complete silence, broken only by the clink of dishes. Aaron calmly ate everything the servants served, as if not noticing the girl's nervousness. Lady Walrose was very tense at how awkward it was. She wondered if he called her because he wanted to say something. And suddenly Aaron turned to Valrose. She even froze in surprise, really. The guy asked her if she would agree if he proposed to her. She frowned and asked why he was asking if he himself did not plan to do so. But Aaron did not speak thoughtlessly. He believed that by taking her as his wife, he would, at the very least, not be unhappy. And now what? Duroy asked. Happiness, he said and smiled, the one he loved and wanted to marry. She is dead. Having heard these words, Durua tensed up and a chill ran through her body. What, dead? She thought, and Aaron explained when he arrived from sword training. He had to defeat 150 monsters to become a knight. During this time, he had to survive and solve problems on his own without anyone's help. To survive, he sold animal and monster skins, and he often saw her there. From their conversation, he realized that she wasn't from around here either. Even though she didn't say her last name, he knew where she was from because that town was full of rich people. Aaron truly fell in love and decided to propose when his trial was over. But his grandfather arrived, and he had to urgently return to the capital. Later, he returned to that city and stayed there for 3 months, but she never showed up. He was forced to go straight to her family and was shown Alice's grave. He visited the Momentum family. Maybe he saw the grave, but not the body, although Rimland would hardly have started making fake graves. If Alice had appeared in the capital, Aaron would have noticed why she had to hide something from someone dear to her. The place where he received the title was not called Earnhardt by any chance, she thought, and called out to Aaron. But she didn't have time to ask the question. The servant informed the master that the owner had returned. "Welcome, Walrose," her groom's parents cried out cheerfully. They apologized for interrupting them. She hadn't stopped by for ages. They asked if she liked the food. Duroy thanked her. It was very tasty. The man ordered the carriage to be harnessed, and Walrose asked him to sit down and relax. Aaron felt awkward, and Rose could not refuse. That same evening, in his mansion, Duroy asked Nady if her brother was a knight, and the maid answered yes. She would have liked to ask him how Aaron was doing, but it wasn't that easy. The knight's code was harsh, and the Claymore family valued their reputation. The girl thought about it, because she couldn't even find out where Aaron was practicing with the sword. But if this is really their Alice, then why haven't they seen each other yet? He probably should have run into her after arriving in the capital. And I would have understood that she was Alice Momentum. Neely asked my lady if she was going to the Edgar family tea party. No, Duroy answered. "There's no point in even sending a refusal," she said. "Yes," Neely asked in surprise, but she understood and said that she would go. If she sends a refusal, he will come here himself, and she needs to get rid of him, no matter how rude it is or not. There was a knock at the door. It was the butler Daniel who had arrived, Walrose asking him to come in. The man simply beamed with pride. Durua asked, "I got it, of course," the butler replied. And he handed his mistress the elixir of memory. But then the girl was absorbed by what was happening. Nekton appeared among the crowd and said that he had told her that she would like it. He said with a haughty look, he should be grateful that he puts off all the horrors. "Isn't that so?" asked Nekton, his gaze piercing the observer. "Alice Rimland," the man said with a sly grin. Waking up from sleep, the girl screamed in horror at the nightmare she had just seen. She was shaking and her heart was pounding wildly, trying to cope with anxiety and fear. Calming down, she hugged the blanket to herself and thought. Their eyes met. Her heart was pounding. The girl tried to calm herself down by saying that it was just a dream. Just a dream. And he was not prophetic. She saw only an illusion caused by her own fears. Alice didn't tell anyone about her prophetic dreams because it could become her weakness. But she told Duroy because of the threat from Edgar Nekton. Aaron Claymore, who comes to the tea party, will be killed. Judging by the dream, she did not want to see Nekton today. He was glad to see Lady Rimlad. Then he introduced himself as Nekton Edgar and asked if she was Walrose's best friend. He wanted to ask her something and asked if he could take up some of her time. He asked if she was aware of Walrose's connections with Lord Claymore, which he only learned about after the engagement. "Yes," Alice answered. "They got married in a hurry. She didn't expect a marriage proposal at all." Nekton muttered. "I wonder what the proposal was anyway," the girl asked. The guy tensed up. Well, since she agreed without thinking, that means there is no love between them. Alice didn't even know what to say about this, and Nekton wanted to ask her to find out what Walrose thought about Sir Claymore. Lady Rimland wondered why she had even answered, perhaps because she had considered him a friend of Duroy's since childhood. She didn't need to talk to him, the girl suddenly realized, and said that she needed to leave immediately. But then Edgar gloomily said that he was not insisting. If she considered this request tactless, then she need not fulfill it. No, Alice thought, looking at this man with irritation, she considers him tactless. "Not quite," she replied. "It's not difficult." If so, then Nekton offered to tell her a story. Alice replied, not quite interested, that she was listening to him attentively. "But everyone knows that the Count has been friends with Duroy since childhood," she thought, stunned after the story. What if they talk about her, she thought, looking into his eyes. Everything is fine. Let's continue the conversation. Alice answered honestly that she thought Duroy did not love him, clarifying that these were only her thoughts. What if these are just her thoughts? Nekton asked. Appearance, voice, Alice continued to explain, although Edgar asked, it doesn't prove anything yet. And also, Led Rimland, is she the friend with whom Walrose corresponded from an early age? He asked. It was so, Nekton thought that they were doing it secretly and asked how they met. Well, Alice began, thinking that she didn't want to tell him about Earnhardt. The guy assessed her with his gaze and took him aside, grinning. He asked her not to be afraid. He knew her as a dear friend of Valrose and would never hurt her. If he was going to do this, he would have asked someone else to find out and asked if she still didn't trust him. As you say, the girl began to answer, as if in a zombie state, telling how she met Duroy. But then a guy ran into the office, opened the doors, and apologized for interrupting. Coming to her senses, she looked at Bart. He had made a mistake in his haste, but Alice needed to leave immediately. "Stop, what?" Alice thought in fear. What was that? Nekton asked the son of the Duke of Rimland what brought him here, but the boy could not say it. It was a family matter. He knew it was a rude answer, but it would be better for them to finish this conversation another time. Then, asked the Count, "Is there enough time? How about another day?" That day Nekton Edgar was so involved in her visions. And it was from that moment that Alice realized that the Edgar from her dreams and the real one were different. Duroy shook the bottle and asked, "Is this the elixir of memory, a rare potion that brings back memories?" It was so rare and expensive that she had to spend half of her fortune, but she was worried about the butler's words. "My lady," he said, "if he drinks it, he could lose consciousness for a week. It all depends on how damaged his memory is." Someone Edgar, hero or villain, what role Aaron would play, she wasn't sure if this potion would give her answers. But she wanted to make sure that Nekton Edgar was not a villain. From the first sip it seemed that it tasted like sticky water. After drinking the potion, nothing happened at first, which is why Durua already thought that something was wrong. But suddenly, a strange feeling enveloped her body, which made the girl scared. In an instant, everything started to swim before my eyes, and my heart began to beat louder, as if it wanted to burst out of my chest. The girl tossed and turned on the bed. Her chest ached. She was practically suffocating, gasping for air. Her eyes closed. A bright light blinded her, and suddenly all the memories began to scroll through her head. It was so strange to watch my life as if from the outside. And now it has come to her childhood, and the light has blinded her again. Her hands turned the pages of the book finally. She could remember the novel she had read in her past life. The novel, He and Alice, which she read 3 years before her death, is a 3-volume book, but she read 2 volumes. Alice Rimland comes to the capital because the secret of her birth has been revealed, and Nekton, who is pursuing Aaron. Oh yes, Alice, she already has a favorite. While she lived in Earnhardt, she secretly collected money to escape from Baron Moomend. And by chance I met someone. All that was known about him was that he had dark hair and had magical items. Although he said nothing, he was an important figure in the novel, and there was no sense of incompatibility with the plot emanating from the stranger. But after their separation, Alice could not remember either the voice or the face, but despite this, she liked this mysterious guy. His name was Ed, but when Alice returned, they never saw each other again. After the secret of her daughter's kidnapping was revealed, Alice was taken away from there. It was a disgrace to the Rimland family. That's why Alice couldn't just find Ed. She waited for him to explain everything, but he never came. Ed disappeared a couple of days before Alice needed to go to the capital, after which she gave in and resigned herself to the fact that Earnhardt was just a thing of the past. When she saw Aaron and Nekton, she immediately thought of Ed. But Duroy Valrose already loved Nekton, and there were many readers who believed that Edgar would be this Ed. But eventually, Nekton learned of Duroy's intentions to get rid of Alice just before the engagement. She tried, but Chapter 51, He and Alice, reveals the truth. He couldn't believe that Alice screamed after the one who tried to kill her, Edgar thought. After returning to the mansion, he spoke to Valrose for the last time, thinking that he should take Alice as his wife. Duroy answered like a doll. He tried to get to the Emperor, but Duke Rimland was in his way. He thought he could use Alice's hands to get him out of the way. I asked which method would be the fastest. "Yes, Your Highness," Duroy repeated again. "Exactly," the guy said, grinning. What a fool he was. "She can't do anything of her own free will until he orders her," the magician remembered. And, coming closer to his companion, he said that he wanted to hear a tale of salvation and punishment. His power was to control the emotions of others. "Forgive me, of course," Nekton asked Duroy without any remorse if she would die for him. These memories were brought back to her by the elixir of memory, Nekton Edgar, a pompous, unceremonious man who calls her his friend. But he is nobody to her. She really did get close to someone who could never be trusted. It's clear, Nekton thought at his own tea party. In the end, Walrose chose the other side. And she was changing. He stopped understanding her motives, but he could tell that she was moving away from him. After the engagement, she never came in. Perhaps the spell had worn off, but even if that was the case, he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't use the spell again or feel that it was really over. What's the problem? Is it because of Alice or Aaron? If not them, then, the Count thought reluctantly, perhaps because of him, as the man then turned to his grace. He returned and Nekton asked, "Great. What did she say?" The guy replied that he was unable to meet with Lady Duroy. He was told that she had been resting for several days because she was not feeling well. He was asked to convey her apologies, but the guy never finished. "Is she feeling unwell?" Nekton asked anxiously. Nighty called loudly for her mistress, not giving up her attempts to wake her, Miss Duroy. Finally, even to the maid's surprise, the girl regained consciousness. "Thank God she woke up," almost cried Needy, coming up to hug. "Needy," asked Duroy. The maid fell sharply on the girl and cried out. She was so worried about her. Duroy was breathing heavily. And then she asked for water. It was interesting to know how much time had passed since she drank the elixir. The girl thought that her throat hurt, and she didn't feel well. Having carefully drunk the water, Durua only began to cough more. The servant was worried about the miss. Immediately, the family ran in with a roar, exclaiming, "Do, thank God she woke up!" "Duroy, she woke up," they said as if they couldn't believe it had finally happened. Watching her family's reaction, the girl involuntarily wondered how long she had slept. The butler told them that she drank the memory elixir. She apologized. It was her fault. Daniel had no choice. It seems she slept for 9 days. Her father told her not to think about protecting him. A butler should not blindly follow orders when the mistress makes the wrong choice. He said that she wanted to remember the mistake she made in front of Sir Claymore. The sister asked if it was true. Even if that was true, why did she drink something so dangerous? Ely asked. Did Claymore not say anything? No, Duroy answered. She was just excited. Aaron didn't say anything. It wasn't true, but she couldn't tell them. We need to check how different this world is from the novel she read. If she tells them, they will think she is talking nonsense because of the potion. Even if she had done something so outrageous, would Aaron put pressure on her like that? Her father asked. If he was such an upstart, they should end the marriage. She thought he could be trusted, but if he treated her like that, her sister asked her not to worry about the family's reputation and honor, but to simply be happy. She wanted to get engaged for the sake of the Walrose name, she asked, but that was not the case. She had no plans to get married at all. But if they break up now, there will be problems, but she understands their reaction after all. She was out of it for 9 days. In truth, when she realized that she was born in a novel, she had to find the memory elixir by any means necessary. And that's before she gets close to Nekton. Ely told Duroy that they were not forcing her, but advised her to take it seriously, that she should marry only for love. She understood their anxiety, but she couldn't believe that she had held out for a month, thinking it was a convenient excuse to avoid meetings. Aaron sent a letter asking about his health, so he will write a reply first. He did not go to tea, but sent a letter to Edgar. She also checked the calendar. They said that someone from the Edgar family came. They came yesterday and on the day of the tea party. It was a good thing she never responded to the invitation. Now she had an excellent excuse. She was very ill. As she rummaged through her memories, she realized where she had gone wrong. The original novel's task was to define the main character. And her memories blurred when she read for too long. Ironically, in the beginning she tried to befriend Nekton to avoid execution. But the one who framed and executed her was ultimately Nekton Edgar. How did she get close to him, you ask? She mistook him for a savior. And she tried to build a friendly relationship because she felt ashamed because she overheard Cheryl. But she visited the Edgar family of her own free will, even if she checked many times. In the original, Durua has known Nekton since childhood. And she loved him, but was executed during an attempt to assassinate Alice under the control of Nekton. She was so worried that her body trembled that she felt how different the past Durua was from the present. Had Nekton interfered with her mind in this life, and suddenly there was a knock on the door, which scared her. It was an unusual knock for the time, and so Duroy hesitated to answer. "Miss, are you here?" a familiar voice suddenly asked from behind the door. Duroy sighed with relief, realizing it was Needy. Letting the maid in, she asked Needy what was wrong. "She has a visitor," Needy reported. "Who?" asked Walrose, thinking that Alice had not yet returned from her trip. So it was Aaron, she had only just managed to think, when the maid explained, Duke Edgar was here. Putting the box on the table and opening it, Aaron thought. Duroy had been recovering for 10 days. There was a letter inside. "Sorry for not sharing any news," Rose wrote. She was resting because she was not feeling well, and thanked him for not going to the ceremony. He did as she asked, but the words, "Beware of Nekton Edgar," were firmly stuck in his head. Nekton Edgar and the fainted Duroy, perhaps there was some connection between them. Firstly, they are quite affectionate with each other, and if rumors are to be believed, they were supposed to get engaged. He thought that they had temporarily drifted apart due to some misunderstanding, but Duroy began to look at the Duke differently. "Duroy," Aaron muttered. "She seems scared lately when she mentions Nekton." Sometimes Duroy is abrupt, but not rude. She is quite straightforward, but she has a kind heart. He believed they could be friends, but he couldn't be sure until he talked to her in person. Before he could put his coat on properly, some watch fell out of it. Having picked them up, Claymore looked at his watch with some bewilderment and caution. But he quickly realized that they were from Alice. He must have forgotten to put them back while he was cleaning the room. He won't be able to see her again. In the past, he didn't take the time to remember her face better, despite using the artifact. He clouded the consciousness of both his opponent and himself. All he knew about Alice was her voice, name, and true feelings. She admitted that she hates Earnhardt with all her heart. And he knew it, Alice. He knew she hated that place. Claymore knew that she wanted to bury everything connected with the past. And he was also sure that she would not want him to pitifully yearn for the old her. She would have laughed if she knew how he felt, and yet he couldn't do otherwise. I knew she wouldn't like it, but I couldn't stop pining for Alice from Earnhardt. Nekton Edgar. I can't believe he showed up again unannounced. He never came before, despite her invitations. Just think. After so much time he deigned to appear, but when he was not expected. Even if she refused to meet, he could use magic. And if that's the case, then what's the point of resisting? She thought and stopped in front of the door. The door to the reception room creaked open and the Walroses stopped in the men's yard. She looked with displeasure at those sitting at the end of the room, obviously Nekton, but standing next to him was a man named Brahmin Duff. It was Nekton's personal guard. When Darua saw him a couple of times as a child, his eyes were brighter. But now, for sure, Nekton has brainwashed everyone in the Edgar house. The last time she saw Nekton was when he handed her an invitation to a tea party. It had only been a suspicion then, but now Walrose was sure. As soon as the girl sat down, Nekton said, "She lost weight. Well, she was sick," she replied. "What was the reason?" asked the Duke. "That she fell ill so suddenly, and for several days." "A cold," Duroy answered with displeasure, and asked if he had really come just for this question. Tapping on the armrests, he said, "She visited the Claymore house after receiving an invitation to a party from him, and she wasn't sick when she saw him," Nekton noticed observantly. The girl became nervous. He knows that she visited Aaron. Apparently she was being watched by one of his people. He did the same with powerful figures in the novel. Nekton asked not to misunderstand him, assuring her that he was not following her. "If not for her, then for Aaron," Duroy asked angrily. "For what reason?" "Who knows," he answered indifferently. Alrose went all in and asked why he invited them to the tea party. She had no intention of coming. Despite the invitation, Lady Alice had disappeared. Sir Aaron had declined the invitation. Besides, she got sick. "So, is it her fault that she feels unwell?" the girl asked, jumping up. "Well," the Duke replied, he was a little taken aback by the news of her poor health. He still suspected that this was just an excuse, Duroy thought. Now she was afraid to even be in the same room with him. "No, that's enough with her," the girl confidently decided, calming her heartbeat. "She still doesn't feel well," she told the guy. "She better go." Not letting her leave just like that, the Duke suddenly called Brahmin. "Yes, Your Highness," he responded. And, lifting the box from the floor, he presented it to the gentleman. "What is this?" Valrose asked warily as Nekton opened the box. Pouring water from the vessel into the glass, the Duke explained that it was holy water. What, Duroy asked, stunned, taken aback by her incomprehension of his motives. Nekton didn't answer. He simply took a sip of the prepared water. As she could see, the water was not poisoned, Edgar said, and asked if she should drink another glass to make sure. She didn't understand what this meant at all. This big bottle was really filled with holy water. But why? "Sometimes she's such a problem," Nekton said as he approached. "If only everything went as he planned." Having said this, he touched a strand of her hair, running his hand through it. But then Duroy's face changed to disgust and she trembled, watching Nekton's hand. "He's serious," she exclaimed indignantly. She'd been manipulated her whole life, no matter how many times he'd rejected her or hurt her. She always came back as if she was tied or under the control of some spell. You would think that it was just the opposite. "Doesn't he remember the past?" she continued to scream. Since childhood she did everything as he wanted, did more than any other friend could offer. After a pause, Nekton smiled and said, "She was right. Thanks to her, he was able to do everything his way. And was it wrong of her?" she asked. "My dear Walrose," said Nekton, "everything was wrong from the very beginning. Absolutely everything. Selfish as usual, says whatever he wants and doesn't even try to listen to the other side. Oh, right. The Duke suddenly turned around. He didn't know if she had already heard from her, but he never planned an engagement with Alice Rimland. She can tell her to return to the capital. However, he wouldn't mind if she stayed in Earnhardt forever." Duroy broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that Alice had gone to Earnhardt. Walrose didn't hold her tongue and asked how he knew Alice was there. But suddenly she went cold. "Stop. The only one who still knows about this. This can't be." Holding back her rage, she angrily asked Nekton if it was he who had brainwashed Nady. Nekton was embarrassed and worried, realizing that he had been caught. But he still admitted that it was not exactly brainwashing. Durua wavered, but did not retreat. "To be more precise, it's more like hypnosis," the guy explained nervously. "What then?" the girl exclaimed. "She already knew, didn't she?" asked Nekton. "Otherwise, why was she so scared that time?" He knew that she had guessed his secret, but why then didn't he do anything about it? Walrose didn't understand at all, Nekton continued nervously, but it was only that time. He knew she wouldn't believe him, but she would repeat it anyway, sweat pouring off him like it does when you have a fever or poisoning. And suddenly Nekton began to breathe more and more heavily, even grabbing the back of the chair to stay on his feet. Holy water, she realized, was usually perceived as a great favor. No, she was completely confused. Nekton looked at her and said, "He never followed her and never will." While the Duke was trying to suppress the urge to vomit, the maid, apologizing for the intrusion, informed Miss Duroy that a guest had arrived. "Who?" she asked. "Sir Aaron," the girl answered. "Well, why now?" Miss thought, dropping her hands. The hero and the villain of the novel were in the same place. She had a bad feeling, really, she asked, and asked to take Aaron to another room. "His lordship is already leaving," she concluded, but Nekton had another solution. "No," he said clearly. "It looks like this will take some time," he said unsteadily, asking Brahmin to wait outside. "And he told her to bring her fiancé here. Lady Alice is not there, but the two of them will be enough to compensate for the tea party." She reminded Clarissa that she was her mistress, but then the door creaked and Clarissa told Miss that the matter was this. Sir Claymore interrupted them, saying, "It's too late to go to another room, Duroy." And then he greeted his lordship. The observer watched what was happening in the dream. Only one person did not get along with it. "Once, Conte, it will be best," the man spoke incoherently. "Walrose." Nekton turned to her. "Of course," she said a little more clearly. She didn't want to be separated from Alice, despite the rumors. Edgar asked if she wanted to sever all ties with him. Duroy asked if she was important to him, and she herself answered no. Aaron was more important to her than him. She no longer needed to communicate with him, so she suggested that they stop their games of friendship. "Oh, I see," said Nekton. "That means they are very important to her." And suddenly the doors of the hall opened, letting in light along with two familiar faces. Aaron's gaze immediately focused on someone in front of him. Claymore took up his sword, but suddenly thrust it into Alice Rimland's back. The girl fell, bleeding, and Aaron didn't even look in her direction, as if he was challenging Nekton. "Then there is no point in holding back any longer," he said and stepped forward. A fierce battle began. Invisible to the observer's eye, only the girl's scream of horror rang in her ears. Alice came to her senses in a cold sweat and quickly gulped in air. Everything around was going on as usual. Birds were chirping outside the window, and wood was crackling in the fireplace. Alice's hands were shaking. She had had this dream even before arriving in Earnhardt, and her hands still shook whenever she thought about him. She had been hiding here for 10 days already. There was a knock on the door from outside, and they told Miss that they were ready to leave. "Okay," the girl replied. "I'm already leaving, to be honest." She was still afraid to go back. Nekton Edgar is still a terrifying opponent. All she knew was that the Duke used black magic, but she didn't know why he was trying to get her, or why he was so obsessed with Duroy. And there were no new dreams that would clarify these questions, so instead of waiting for clues, she prepared. This is the diary in which she wrote down everything about Nekton that she saw in her dreams, wrote down and reread. Her departure was not an escape. In order to prepare for the battle against the villain, she read many books about black magic, and she took out her holy artifact. It looked like an ordinary decoration, but it would protect her from the influence of Nekton's dark spell. Clutching the necklace, Alice thought that with it she would be able to escape Nekton's hypnosis and protect her life and her friend. Alice told Duroy not to go to the tea party, but somehow by chance it turned out that this very party came to her. "What a coincidence that they met just after the tea party was cancelled," the Duke remarked. By the way, Nekton asked Sir Aaron if he hadn't said that he was unwell. He had been unwell until the appointed day, so only now was he able to visit his bride, despite her ailments. Claymore said, "Were knights always so good at lying?" she wondered. What business brought him to the Walrose house, Aaron asked his lordship. Nekton asked if he needed a special reason for the visit. Even though they were close, it was rude to come visit someone without a good reason, he noted, and Edgar said that the reason for his visit should not concern him. The tension between them was growing, and then Claymore said that he and Duroy would soon be married, so she had to. Duke Edgar looked coldly at his recently acknowledged childhood friend. Meeting his gaze, her heart began to beat faster with excitement. One look at his face scared her to the point of goosebumps. Noticing his bride's nervousness, Sir Aaron moved closer to her, and standing next to him he touched his fingers and then took Duroy's cold hand. Nekton bit his cheek and watched them, and Valrose couldn't help but think that Aaron's hand was so warm. She had someone to watch her back, and that was enough to make her feel better. With her friend's support, she asked Nekton if he remembered what he had asked her on the terrace last time. Then he asked Walrose if Aaron Claymore was dear to her. Aaron is truly dear to her, dearer than he, Nekton, so she will have to break off all contact with him. That's why she has no choice but to keep her distance. They got engaged, each with their own purpose, each with their own goal, Duroy convinced herself. But then Nekton asked, stunned, if she was serious. It was hard to digest this while standing. "So," Nekton asked as he sat down, "she wants to stay away from him, and how does she imagine this?" "Didn't she make herself clear?" the girl asked. "She said she didn't want to meet alone anymore." "Curious," replied the Duke, and asked if Walrose thought he could really sever all ties with him. For a moment before answering, the girl was stunned, but she finally collected her thoughts, and she confidently said that she saw no circumstances preventing this. "He behaves extremely strangely. She is nobody to him. He says they are friends, but in fact he never thought of her that way. Maybe he thinks she loves him." Nekton, he always checked on her, as if he cared, but at the same time he got terribly irritated whenever she did something he didn't like. Duroy asked if he really thought that she would always be on his side, that he could push her around like a toy, just because of her feelings for him. "Enough, Walrose," he said, but still, there was something she couldn't understand. She thought he was just playing with her. Hadn't she gotten tired of it after 10 years? If it was just the fact that she wanted to leave that was hurting his pride, then Nekton leaned forward, grabbing the table. There was a loud crunch, a cold gaze pierced Duroy, and the Duke said, "It doesn't matter at all." Frightened by his display of power, Walrose jumped back. Aaron noticed the excitement and fear reflected on his bride's face, and then he covered her with himself. After pausing and looking at the couple, Nekton said that if everything were like this, it would have ended long ago. He stood up with a heavy sigh and asked if he thought she loved him, and she answered, "Of course not." He explained to Walrose that it was not possible. Walrose, "Damn Walrose," he muttered. Aaron asked his lordship to step aside. The Duke asked the girl if Aaron Claymore was dear to her, despite the fact that he was in love with another. He knows about this too, Duroy thought, exchanging glances with Aaron. Perhaps he is aware that it is Alice. She already knew this. One should not deceive oneself with the thought that in love, only the feelings of two people are important. When she said that Aaron was dear to her, she meant something else. Besides, he should know how she could be forever devoted to unrequited love. It went without saying that she asked him not of her own free will, but because of her feelings for someone else. Now Nekton was even more irritated by what he heard. Nekton, Aaron, and Duroy looked at each other silently, not knowing what to say. Suddenly it became more difficult to restrain himself, and a trickle of blood rolled from Nekton's mouth. He coughed heavily on it. His body shook, but the cough did not stop. Duroy became alarmed by her friend's condition and called out his name, running towards him. Aaron was about to stop Durua, but she saw nothing in front of her except Nekton. Coming to his aid, she worriedly asked why he was coughing up blood. "Nekton!" she cried out when he didn't answer, but only began to cough more loudly. Sitting down on a chair, he said that he would like to let her go, but he was afraid that he could not. But of course, this thirst for blood will not go away. "What?" Duroy asked warily. What he was talking about. Nekton asked Walrose to give her advice. Even if she was afraid of him, she shouldn't do it so obviously. But then Claymore pulled Duroy away from the eccentric man. Having come to his senses, Nekton looked at the tabletop he had broken, as well as the drops of blood on the floor. A pathetic sight, Nekton thought, angry with himself. Aaron and Duroy looked at him with concern and caution, and after looking at them, he looked away. And suddenly he disappeared, as if no one had been there at all. He disappeared? Durua asked in shock. He teleported or something. It looks like that. Aaron sighed. His blood also disappeared. He didn't think that magic was so easy to use. Before he could finish speaking, he started coughing, just like Nekton a couple of minutes ago. Seeing the blood and immediately seeing a problem with Claymore, she approached him, calling out to him in shock. "What's going on?" Walrose asked, alarmed and indignant. "Everything is fine," Aaron answered, catching his breath. "My stomach just hurts a little." "If so, then it was worth flushing the stomach. I asked if everything was okay. It looks like he received internal damage, but everything is okay." "He's fine, although he's coughing up blood," the girl thought with disbelief. "Seriously." She immediately thought it was strange when Nekton suddenly started bleeding. Did they have an energy battle? Durua asked. It was embarrassing to admit, but he was simply destroyed. His training was not enough. He trained every day. Judge for yourself why Nekton also coughed up blood. Aaron thought it wasn't because of him. What a pity. When Aaron started coughing up blood again, Durua asked him to wait while she called a priest or a magician. But suddenly the girl stopped in front of the table, her gaze falling on the holy water. Nekton said it was holy water. She can heal most wounds and illnesses, the girl thought and called out to Aaron. "It must be holy water," he remarked. Having never seen such a vessel before, she did not know if it was real, since Nekton had given it to her. "Do you think she's real?" asked Walrose. Claymore asked to be allowed to check. And how, she only managed to ask, how he, asking for forgiveness, poured holy water into himself. "Aaron!" the girl exclaimed, asking, "Have you gone completely crazy? They don't even know if she's real." But contrary to her fears, Aaron remained okay, laughed, and Rose breathed a sigh of relief. After such an exhausting event, Claymore and Val Rose sat tiredly on the sofa. And suddenly Aaron apologized to Duroy when she told him about Duke Edgar. At first he did not believe her. "Well," she replied after a pause, "she should have apologized too, so they're even. She needed to deal with it personally, but in the end, she used him as a shield to say whatever she wanted, even getting him hurt because of her. But he himself wanted to stand up for her," Claymore admitted, laughing awkwardly. "Besides, not just today, he would like to protect her in the future too, if the opportunity presented itself, even though he had shown himself to be less than reliable now." Duroy laughed at the suggestion and asked if he would then take her as his wife and protect her, what Aaron asked sheepishly, his cheeks flushing. But after a pause he continued, "If that is her wish then." "She was just joking," the girl exclaimed in fear, "and he already loves another." Aaron didn't answer but just frowned and turned away from Valrose, a pain in his chest. "It had already been 6 months since his return and the sight of her grave," Aaron said, holding back his emotions. At that time, he couldn't even think about marrying anyone else. 6 months had passed since Alice's arrival in the capital. It dawned on Duroy. He thought he would never marry again for the rest of his life, but he likes her, Duroy, as a friend, and even if it wasn't love, he was sincere in his desire to protect her. She believed that people could live happily even in an arranged marriage, Aaron asked, so she accepted him. Aaron is in love with Alice, and most likely Alice also has feelings for Ed. After thinking about this, Valrose said seriously that she had something to discuss with him before that. "Alice Rimland," she said. Hearing this name, Aaron broke out in a cold sweat and impatiently asked what. The girl asked why he was avoiding her. It felt like he was afraid to meet her. Aaron immediately stood up, stood for a moment in thought, and then walked away from Valrose, towards the window. "You already know, Aaron," she thought with hope and sorrow. "You know that she is the one he loves." Pulling himself together, Claymore said, "She is not the same person. They are connected only by name. He himself was at the grave." Anger burst forth, and he asked how the dead could return alive as a daughter of the House of Rimland. He asked Duroy to simply respond to his proposal she needed to get married right now. Walrose needs to avoid being accused of attempting to kill Alice Rimland out of jealousy towards Nekton by any means necessary. She is afraid of him, afraid that she will suffer the same end as in the novella. Aaron said that he would protect her, and also proposed marriage. But suddenly she apologized to Aaron. She didn't think it was possible. Guilt. The feelings she had for Alice, her friend, and the pride that, Aaron asked, stunned. But She was grateful for his offer, apologized for daring to joke about it. Oh, Aaron sighed. It was he who needed to ask for forgiveness. He apologized for taking his words back. Duroy gave up trying to convince him that Alice was his first love. However, Alice was her friend. So instead she will introduce her as her friend, and he is her fiancé, so he should be nice to her friends. This concerns Alice, who is not his first love, so he should stop avoiding her. He agreed, she said laughing, and he would have to love her as a friend, of course. Yes, Duroy, Aaron answered. Nekton walked, wandering along long corridors lit only by natural light. The cough, accompanied by coughing up blood, continued all the way home. Finally, he opened the creaky door to his room and, breathing heavily, wandered to where he could rest. This is the consequence of using magic when he is not in the best shape, Nekton thought. After giving his body a rest and the coughing stopped, this must be the limit of his stupidity. He knew he was unwell, yet he stayed, even after hearing that Aaron Claymore had arrived. He is Walrose's fiancé, and from now on they will spend a lot of time together. The Duke rang the bell from the table, and at that very moment a servant approached him. His lordship stood up and ordered the boy to bring some troll blood, and, waiting for the servant, he looked ahead, plunging into new thoughts about the past. The servants in this house were different from the others, cold, taciturn, or even silent. Even meetings with each other during shift changes were not filled with any emotion. Hundreds of people live on this estate, but there is not a drop of warmth here. And he is the one who is to blame for this, but also before using magic on these people. They were cold and indifferent to him. Without magic, they mocked his every word. And now all those who used to laugh behind his back are unable to even smile. So why is he still preoccupied with thoughts of the past? The catalyst was Walrose's words. Aaron is really dear to her. Therefore, she has no choice but to keep distance between them. Valrose, said Nekton, opening the box containing the cufflink that was precious to him. But before he took the decoration in his hand froze, he could not touch it, while his hand was stained with blood. Walrose, he muttered. Valrose, Valrose. Nekton exhaled through his nose and exhaled through his mouth. Valrose, he called, as if tasting the word. But it wasn't so. He finally forced himself to say another word, Duroy. It all started in childhood. Duroy Valrose climbed out of the lake and left the estate, as if she had no intention of returning there again. He later encountered Cheryl Bournain and hypnotized her to win her over. Bournain also wanted to play with his feelings, and so he was sure that she would not consider it unfair. The mental manipulation began with the pronunciation of the girl's full name. Changing the way the subject was addressed could break the spell, which is why the mage needed to make sure he always used the same name. It was also desirable to meet regularly at a certain place at a certain time, but he was unable to enjoy her company because she was not a Walrose. After sending Bournain on his way, he peered into the lake before diving in and retrieving the cufflink that Walrose had thrown into the water. Nekton has 2 older brothers, and over time the difference in their abilities became more and more obvious, and his position became clearer. Perhaps this was the reason for their envy. Unpleasant incidents connected with him began to happen more and more often. For example, the horse he was supposed to ride suddenly reared up, and there was even an incident where a chandelier fell from the ceiling next to him. He was able to survive because he could sense other people's intentions, but as time went on, it became increasingly difficult to cope without magic. He couldn't let anyone know about his power, so he was always on guard. And that's when Duroy Valrose came into his life. Since his attackers were concerned about their social status, they quieted down during visits from guests. When Walrose came to the estate, he could relax, and one day she brought rare tea. She said that she wanted to share a delicious drink, and even brewed it herself. It was the most delicious Darjeeling from Romer. She brewed it the way he likes it. After a few tries, Walrose proudly offered him a cup, and looking at her, he couldn't help but smile. It smelled very nice. He said she did a great job, really, she asked enthusiastically. However, at that moment, he felt a growing excitement emanating from the servant standing next to him. This emotion did not come from him or from Valrose. Servant of Bello Revord? This man was a faithful servant of his mother, Patsia Edgar. The boy immediately put the cup aside and told the servant that he had never seen this cup. The cup was not made of silver and was not enchanted to neutralize poisons. He had never seen it before. Bello pretended not to know anything, saying that it was a cup from a new service brought from the east. And yet, Nekton relaxed, because all the hostility disappeared as soon as a guest appeared in the estate. But now he almost paid for his carelessness with tea prepared by Valrose. But why now? He would like to offer the servant some of this tea, if possible, said Nekton, and Bello exclaimed in amazement. What are you saying, sir? He waved his hand timidly. The lady prepared tea especially for him. He asked Walrose to understand that Bello was like his right hand, so if he drank the tea, it would be the same as if he had drunk it himself. Smiling, he asked Bello if he would dare to embarrass him in front of the lady and coldly ordered a drink. He poisoned the mug, which means he has to drink from it. Many different emotions are mixed in him, such as anxiety and fear. The man kept trying to defend the lady's work, but Nekton, unable to bear it, asked, refusing. Duroy watched them awkwardly. It was a shame that he hadn't drunk his tea, but she didn't dare say a word against it. The servant hesitated. He looked at the cup in fear, taking it, and his friend said, "It is very hot." "Drink it," Nekton insisted. "Don't embarrass your master." "Why are you looking at Walrose?" Nekton thought, trying to get help from her. "It's stupid. She doesn't understand what's going on here. She's more angry at his behavior." "That's right. He most likely thinks that he's in a bad mood again." And even if she had known all the details, she would not have defended the servant who tried to poison his master. Besides, Walrose couldn't even imagine how she would know that Pastia Edgar, his mother, had ordered a servant to kill him by poisoning his food. He seemed to have no desire to drink tea himself, the gentleman noticed after a while. "Then let me help," thought the boy, and his eyes changed color. Bello's body suddenly stopped obeying him and, as if by force, his hand with the cup was brought to his mouth, pouring tea. He couldn't remove his hand, so he choked on the poisoned tea, waving his other hand. Walrose became worried, but then Nekton said that it seemed the tea didn't taste good. While the man struggled for oxygen, the girl agreed, apparently thinking it was time to apologize. But suddenly Bello managed to escape from the clutches of magic and, staggering, threw the cup on the floor. "There is no need to apologize to an ordinary servant," he said emotionlessly. Still, Nekton apologized for bothering her. He thought it would be better for her to return home today. Walrose glared at him. Angry, he thought in surprise. What if after this she never comes back? It felt like she never wanted to see him again. Duroy, he thought without saying the name out loud, just watching her walk away. His chest ached with injustice, Duroy. He repeated her name in his thoughts again, and yet finally, hoping for a spell, he cast, "Come again, Valrose." She was probably upset, he knew, but there was nothing he could do. How could he tell her? That his own mother was trying to kill him. After that day, Walrose never made him tea again. Aaron asked Duroy if Duke Edgar had always been like this. Frightening, she asked. Not sure. He asked if they weren't close. "He didn't scare me like that before," Duroy replied with a heavy sigh, although sometimes he was a real scoundrel. "By the way," she suddenly asked, "is the holy water real, judging by the emitted mana?" "Yes," Aaron answered. "Such a large vessel filled with such pure holy water must have cost a fortune." So valuable that it was more valuable than anything Aaron had, Duroy wondered why Nekton had given it to her. "Well," said the noble man, it was time for him to go, but suddenly they were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Who is it?" asked the girl. "Miss Duroy," the servant answered. "It is Clarice." She apologized for the intrusion. "But then she said that Lady Alice had come to see her," Duroy gasped, looking at the guest. Oh no, Aaron still had bloodstains on his clothes. And by the way, Nekton entered the room, but no one saw him leave because he left them using magic. She asked Clarissa to wait a minute. She would call her a little later. "Yes, miss," the maid answered. She asked Aaron what they should do. He said that they could say that the Duke urgently teleported on business, or rather, used the artifact. Yes, but how will they explain the blood people will think they had a fight? They need to wash it off with something. Looking around, she said, "Okay, time to show that she would use holy water for him without hesitation." But she was very valuable, Aaron exclaimed worriedly. He would not allow her to use her so wastefully. Clarissa knocked again and informed Miss. Lady Alice said that she could come later if she was busy and asked what she should tell her. She told Aaron to come up with an excuse for coughing up blood, thinking it would be best to talk to her sooner rather than later, and she asked Clarissa to tell her that she could come in. "Wait, Duroy!" Aaron exclaimed anxiously. But then the door creaked open and Alice entered the room, thinking to ask Duroy how she was doing. But she finished the sentence looking at another person in the room. "Hello, Alice," Duroy said happily and a little awkwardly, Aaron greeting Lady Alice. The girl also formally greeted Sir Aaron, but suddenly her gaze caught on the spots and she exclaimed in alarm, "That's it." Claymore became embarrassed and confused, saying that he lost control of his mana during training. Could it really make you cough up blood, she asked. It happens sometimes, he answered, Duroy thought. Only Aaron knows about their past. Well, it was time for Aaron to go. Duroy asked him if he was sure he should leave in such a state. Rimlin turned to Sir Aaron. She brought this perfume for Duroy, but after sprinkling perfume on a handkerchief, she handed it to Aaron, asking him to dry himself with it. The guy thanked her shyly, and watching them, Valrose thought, so he has a sweet side. But before Aaron left, Alice remembered something else. She said she had gifts for them. Duroy raised an eyebrow in surprise, and Aaron asked, "Excuse me." Taking 2 necklaces out of her bag, the girl happily congratulated them on their engagement. After that, they went down to see Claymore off. He wanted to tell her, Alice. To say that he and Duroy do not love each other, they are only friends, but he promised himself to remain silent. And he was afraid of her reaction. There was a pain in his chest, so he couldn't admit that he was Ed. If he betrayed the memories she and Ed shared, would he be able to treat her as a friend of Duroy's? Aaron wondered. He had to keep the promise he had made to her, Alice, but his resolve was shaken by Duroy's words. So, this pendant will protect her from Nekton's hypnosis? She asked. Yes, Alice answered. It is a holy artifact that protects against black magic. Aaron also needs protection from his charms. Aaron is the real hero of the novel, she thought, so he must confront Nekton, the villain. Alice heard that Duke Edgar was here too. Nekton arrived first, but used magic to leave the estate, so the servants did not know about his departure. Duroy Valrose, Aaron Claymore, and Nekton Edgar, all in one place, Alice muttered. Duroy wondered what she was trying to say. The girl asked if Sir Aaron was coughing up blood because of Duke Edgar. Walrose knew she wouldn't buy that weird excuse. Yes, it was all because of Nekton. But Nekton, too, although not because of Aaron having heard such news, Alice was stunned and asked what. Why is she surprised? Duroy wondered and asked in general what brought her to her. Immediately switching to a new tune, Alice asked her friend if she said this today. That Aaron is really dear to her, and something about not wanting to be friends with Nekton anymore. Rose's heart began to beat faster at such precision, and she asked if she had a dream about today. No, in her dream she said these words at a tea party, the one hosted by Duke Edgar. Wait, she asked, so the same thing happened that was supposed to happen that evening. In that case, why did she say not to go because Aaron would get hurt? But what happened was different from what she saw in the dream. In it, after her words, Duke Edgar hypnotized Sir Aaron, and the latter, under the influence of the spell. First, he killed her, and then he committed suicide. Suicide, shuddering, Duroy repeated in horror. Alice said. Aaron held a sword in his hands, but the killer was Duke Edgar. Since she realized that it was hypnosis, Alice explained that Aaron's gaze suddenly looked down, which was hard not to notice. Yes, she would have thought the same if she had had prophetic dreams. Aaron is not the type who would kill Alice, and then himself. But this means that he can be hypnotized, even though he is a hero. In order to reach a happy ending with Alice, he must be stronger than Nekton. But if he is unable to stop the villain, then today he could die at his hands, perhaps like her. Speaking of her dreams, she seemed to mention that she couldn't hear her words in them, Duroy asked. And she asked directly how she knew then what she was talking about today. But Alice also found it strange, but this had never happened before. But in this dream, she suddenly began to hear her voice, although she still could not see her face. Thanks to the elixir, she was able to remember the thread of the original story, but so much had already changed. She used Alice's dreams as a support, but now they too have changed, the girl thought. So why was Duke Edgar also coughing up blood? Duroy was not sure of the reasons. At first, he was fine. Alice asked to tell her what happened while she was gone. Duroy said that she did not go to the tea shop after all. She was not feeling well. Then, on the day of the party, Nekton sent a man to find out if she was really sick. Having learned the whole story from start to finish, Alice jumped up and asked if Nekton Edgar drank the holy water. Duroy noticed that Alice had now addressed him by his first name without a title, something new. But she confirmed that it was, and Aaron confirmed that it was real holy water. Impossible, Alice exclaimed. Looking at the vessel, Duroy watched her without understanding. And suddenly Alice explained that for dark magicians, holy water is the same as poison, which Duroy asked, taken aback. Holy water heals people, but for Nekton it is poisonous, so why did he drink it? The girl thought. It turns out, Durua asked worriedly, he suffered because of this, it's so strange. Perhaps, Rimlin suggested, he wanted to prove to her that he was not a dark magician. She only just now found out that he uses black magic, and is already silent about the fact that she did not know all the properties of holy water. And if that was the case, he did not admit to having bewitched Nidhi. Then why did he drink holy water in front of her, Walrose wondered. Duroy? Alice suddenly exclaimed, having guessed something. Perhaps the Duke, no, she will tell later when she is sure. Alice could jump to conclusions that asked Duroy, Alice, if you suspect something, say it right away. She needs to know everything she needs to know. Doubting, Alice asked if the reason was much simpler than she thought. Was it possible that... And in all seriousness, she asked if it was possible that Duke Edgar was in love with her. Alice explained her guess by saying that he brought holy water because she was ill, and since he knew that she was afraid of him, he drank the glass in front of her to prove that the water was safe. It sounded logical, but Duroy will tell you why this is impossible. You can start with the fact that he doesn't even call her by name. Secondly, despite all her invitations, he visited her only twice, and not just like that. The first time I asked about what she had said, and the second time was today, to ask about the reasons for her refusal of the invitation. Thirdly, he always checked on her whenever there was a reason. And finally, would a lover treat her the way Nekton treats her? Duroy asked sadly. Alice didn't even know how to react to this situation. There were both facts and facts that contradicted them. It's just a theory, my friend said. She must be wrong if she says so. She came to give the pendant, so she will go now, but will return tomorrow, her friend said and asked if she didn't mind. Of course not, Duroy replied. It will still be at the estate. She noticed Alice was wearing the same jewelry as the ones she gave them. She asked Alice. She had seen in a dream the nature of their relationship. Alice did not know the details, but they got engaged, expecting to break the engagement. Aaron knew who Alice was. He loved her, but still hid it from her. She asked what he would say if she really married him. Does Alice know who he is? What? Alice asked. Fell in love with him. Congratulations. Duroy thought. No. Aaron, why did you put on an artifact that confuses consciousness? Who in the village would recognize it? He definitely did it just to confuse everyone. Oh no, Duroy replied. I just wanted to hear her opinion. If she falls in love with someone, Alice will support her, as long as it is not Duke Edgar. And if she falls in love with someone, she will do the same, her friend said. And on such a wonderful note, they parted until tomorrow. She sincerely hoped that Aaron and Alice would find their way to each other. Spring came, and after the incident with the cufflink thrown into the lake twice, Walrose began to come every day, perhaps out of pride. And every day he said goodbye, come again, Walrose. That day they read books as usual. Suddenly their peace was disturbed by a loudly buzzing beetle flying around the room. The children were distracted from their activities. Nekton was watching the insect, and suddenly a cry was heard. Don't kill it, Nekton. Hearing the request, Nekton looked back at his friend and asked in surprise, what? He heard the buzzing sound in his ear again, and then he realized she was talking about the beetle. She likes bugs, he asked. No, not at all, answered Walrose. Then why? Asked Nekton, frowning. Darua didn't want to harm even the one she hates. She doesn't trust him, the guy asked. It's just, the girl explained, the worst thing you can do. She thought murder was the worst thing a person could do, but it's just a bug, the boy said. He doesn't look at people any better, Rose snorted. Edgar asked not to make a villain out of him. Don't kill anyway, she exclaimed. Beetles become cats, cats become people. It will kill and will burn forever. What nonsense is this? Asked Nekton. Valrose read about this in a book. Yeah, Edgar replied, of course, and the author was Duroy Valrose. Okay, she jokes, but he really shouldn't ruin other people's lives. She would really, really hate that. After thinking about his friend's words, he looked at the beetle and used hypnosis on it. Oh, wow, the little girl exclaimed. He was probably scared by his gaze and flew away, flew away. Well done, Nekton, the girl said happily. And grabbing his hand, she asked him to promise that he would not kill anyone or anything, no matter what. Valrose shone like a holy virgin. Watching her, Nekton felt a little embarrassed. And the next moment he wrapped his little finger around hers, making an unbreakable promise. He promised yes, Valrose asked, laughing, and asked Nekton to remember their oath. Having seen this dream, Nekton shuddered and jumped out of bed, looking at his feet. He slept all day, looking down, Nekton thought. No, maybe even longer. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a sparkling object quickly approaching him. The flying blade cut into the flesh, producing a characteristic sound. However, everything worked out. Nekton managed to react in time and grab the blade. At the same second, he threw it aside and quickly rushed towards the figure looming in the doorway. The hired killer who arrived did not have time to react before the Duke's wrath overtook him. Grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, he pulled down the hood, exposing his face. And at the same moment he was thrown back into the room by force. The man groaned in pain. Nekton staggered and exhaled heavily. The attacker rose, trembling, looking at Edgar. Nekton himself directed an angry glance at the man, but turned away just as abruptly. The man flinched, frightened by the Duke's movements, but continued to watch him. It was a good thing he'd asked for the troll's blood in advance, Nekton thought, glancing at the man. He had healed almost completely while he was sleeping, so there was no need to treat the internal injuries, but the fresh wounds could be treated. The Duke looked back at his attacker, who stepped back. He began to rise unsteadily, and at the same time asked how, having exclaimed, "You were unconscious." "Nothing new, isn't it?" Nekton asked, grinning. He couldn't rely on holy water or potions, only troll blood could heal his wounds. As soon as his hand was healed, he went to his servant. He thought he wouldn't notice, he asked Brahmin Duff. If so, he was extremely disappointed. The man fidgeted, asking for mercy, asking for mercy. He was only following orders. He only did what Lady Edgar told him. He had no choice. "Yes," answered the current Duke. "He understands perfectly well. His mother learned about him through him. And in revenge, he used his abilities to peer into his memories through dreams. That is why he kept him as a servant from his youth, and for the same reason he brought him to the estate despite his wounds. His mother could not even imagine that he was spying on her through the one she sent to spy on him. Just when he thought he was an incompetent fool blindly following orders, he was even able to pretend to be hypnotized. He's like an insect, a small, pathetic midge that doesn't know its place. He took this step again, thinking that the Duke had let down his guard, but the attempt was in vain. But this gave Nekton a reason to use magic on this pathetic creature. He bound Brahmin with magic until his body creaked and the servant himself groaned in pain. Brahmin was racked with consuming pain, and Nekton asked him to say thank you for drinking holy water the other day, which almost killed him. The man was breathing extremely heavily, on the verge of sanity, and begged not to kill, begged his lordship to forgive him. Well, Nekton chuckled at the attempts to stay alive. But suddenly he froze, and Duroy's words flashed through his head, a promise not to kill anyone or anything, no matter what. A scene from a dream flashed before her eyes. "I promised yes," she asked, laughing, and asked Nekton to remember their oath. "You're right, Valrose," Nekton muttered under his breath. He shouldn't kill. The man at his feet was barely making ends meet. It was painful even to breathe. He probably broke his ribs. But then the gaze of the mad Nekton met the gaze of Brahmin, maddened by fear and pain. And he asked coldly, "But he can do everything else, right?" While getting ready, Nady asked Miss if it wouldn't be better to wear a different piece of jewelry. Duroy looked at herself in the mirror, and the maid thought it was too simple compared to the dress. But it was a matching pendant with Aaron, so she couldn't take it off, Miss said. Of course, the true purpose must remain a secret, so I had to come up with a justification for these paired accessories. Although Alice might add a stone as an accessory to her dress, she still didn't want people to gossip about a love triangle, and she shouldn't go without the stone to where Nekton might be. Nady said she would return when Sir Aaron arrived. "Good," said Duroy and thanked him. Some time has passed since that strange meeting between Nekton and Aaron, which ended in a bloody cough, and a cold winter has arrived. Before this, she had learned a lot of new things completely unexpectedly, so she thought that something would definitely happen soon. The day Alice returned to the capital, she sent Aaron a letter with the latest news, after which I met my friend again, and she told me everything she hadn't managed to say the day before. We talked about how Nekton appears in her dreams and about black magic. Nekton Edgar is a black magician. Holy water is deadly for him, but water blessed to heal others cuts like a blade. This happens to magicians who are born that way because their mana is so different from the rest. Alice said that the pendants would protect them from Nekton's magic to a certain extent. Black magic comes in different forms. Therefore, they do not know what Nekton is capable of, and if we are to believe Aaron, who judges from the point of view of a knight, he also has no shortage of physical strength. The times when people were executed simply for involvement in black magic are long gone. For the Duke to be court-martialed, he would have to commit a crime akin to treason, but it seems Nekton hasn't killed anyone yet. Alice isn't entirely sure, but the former Countess, Lord Edgar, the brothers and servants who crossed paths with him are still alive. Was it because they were already in his hands, Duroy asked, or was he planning to use them somehow in the future? Alice immediately remembered that in her dreams he says, "Of course, he won't kill anyone." My God, she said that in her visions he killed Aaron and her. Alice didn't understand it either. Nekton, she only wanted to ask why. She would understand if he were obsessed with Alice, he would hypnotize the Duke of Rimland through her. And he extended his influence to the Emperor, but unlike the original novel, Nekton pursues her. What is he up to? She wondered, and suddenly, with a knock at the door, came a message from Miss Duroy. Sir Aaron had arrived to see her. "Thank you, Nighty." Throwing her cape over her shoulders, Valrose responded and said that she was coming. Nekton has been suspiciously quiet lately. Could he still be recovering from the effects of the holy water? It would be great not to cross paths with him at all, but since she is a member of the nobility, she must attend the royal family's birthday. Duroy, a knight, met her. The girl told Aaron that he looked great. Claymore asked not to embarrass him. He shone like a unicorn, even though he was dressed all in black. It was an honor for her to be his partner. He thanked her and, holding out his hand, asked if we were leaving. "Yes," the bride answered. And yet she couldn't help but say how handsome he was now. What a pity that today was her last day as a bride. They arrived to a noisy celebration, with noise and hubbub coming from every corner, and the gazes of others clearly felt on their bodies. She could guess what they were thinking. Nekton Edgar and Alice Rimland had broken off their engagement, and they most likely blamed her for it. It's funny that she only recently found out that their engagement started with rumors Nekton constantly visited Alice with questions about her, and that's how rumors started that they were lovers. Alice tried to dissuade people, but Nekton stopped her for some reason, saying that he never planned to get engaged to her. So it started with rumors and ended with them. Aaron told Duroy that he forgot to mention that today she also looks incredible. "I know," the girl replied with a sly smile. "I should have said this earlier." And yet she decided to leave her companion. She needed to go to Alice. "Duroy!" he called out, but the girl had already rushed off into the crowd towards Alice, and he did not stop her. Alice had already called her dear friend Walrose, but stopped halfway. It was because the figure of Cheryl, Lady Duroy, suddenly appeared in front of her. She exclaimed, "It's nice to see you." Walrose reluctantly and somewhat taken aback looked at the girl, as well as the company gathered behind her. Likewise, Lady Cheryl, she saw her for the first time since she had laughed at Nekton for rejecting her offer. The girl started talking about Duke Edgar. It seemed that he and Lady Alice would not get married after all. Duroy knew this too, but she didn't understand why she was telling her this. "Why?" asked Cheryl. "Because she remembered very well that his lordship had spoken of her as a dear friend, and she was sure that he tolerated her only out of the kindness of his heart." Duroy thought that she could have been put down sarcastically, but there were too many people around. What if she took this opportunity to make it clear that there was nothing between her and Nekton, she thought, and turned to Cheryl. But then Nekton interrupted her, apologizing for interrupting the conversation, and said that she was deeply mistaken. "Lady Cheryl," the Duke explained, "it is not he who tolerates Walrose, but rather she who tolerates him." "Your Grace?" The girl stepped back timidly. Nekton looked at Valrose. Something inside her tightened and her heart began to beat faster. She expected to cross paths with him and was mentally preparing herself for it, but she didn't think he would appear so quickly. He just arrived, but he already managed to complicate the situation. She might have thought he was defending Walrose, but it was only natural to stand up for someone close to you, the Duke argued. His words put Lady Cheryl in an extremely awkward position, so one must think before one speaks. However, it is even for the better. The girl pursed her lips from resentment and some kind of pain that stabbed her heart. Yes, Duroy thought sympathetically, it's scary to love someone like Nekton. She felt awkward, and Duke Edgar himself asked that his name not be mentioned anymore, and he said coldly, "Lady Cheryl." And noticing some discrepancy, Duroy thought, why is he suddenly calling Lady Bornane by name? But Nekton didn't stop there, calling the girl's full name, Bornine, putting her into hypnosis. At that very moment, Cheryl's gaze dulled and a chill ran through her body. Duroy frowned and watched the girl's expression, not understanding what had suddenly frightened her. But suddenly Lady Bornine clutched her chest, groaning loudly in pain, and people began to fuss. But then the girl, unable to cope with the pain, fell to her knees. "Lady Cheryl," her servant shouted. He continued calling her, as if bringing her to consciousness, and asked if she was okay. Cheryl Bornane had always been in good health, so this sudden attack is unusual. She felt sick the moment Nekton said her name, Walrose thought. And suddenly, behind the crowd of Bournain's close associates, she saw Alice. Alice nodded to her friend, indicating that she had correctly understood what had just happened. Realizing that Alice had seen it too, Duroy realized that this was all Nekton's doing. She looked at him in such a way that her gaze reflected everything that was on the tip of her tongue, but Nekton didn't particularly pay attention to it. Approaching the girl, he asked her servant if the lady suffered from any chronic illness. No, the man answered, stuttering with excitement. It was already difficult for him to control himself. He did not understand why she suddenly. Nekton asked Count Elford to calm down. Lady Cheryl looked painfully at the approaching Duke. And suddenly Nekton reached out to her head. The girls shuddered, worried about Cheryl. But judging by his appearance, it didn't seem like the Duke was doing anything bad. And so, the black magician finally removed his hands from the girl, and she closed her eyes. "Lady Cheryl," the Earl cried out in alarm, seeing his lady unconscious, the people around him frozen in anticipation. Nekton asked him not to worry. He used a magical artifact to put her to sleep. He advised visiting the priest at the palace. The Count thanked him, but that was not all the Duke wanted to say. Edgar hoped that they would not bother them again after receiving help. Lady Cheryl's companion nodded actively and in agreement, and lifting the lady in his arms, carried her away from the celebration. Duroy at the same time looked at Nekton and thought, to annoy them, maybe he meant to annoy him. It doesn't matter. It's better to leave while there is such a chance, she only thought, when Edgar called out to Walrose and she shuddered. The guy asked if she could spare him a minute. Ah, thought Valrose, sighing humbly, and said, of course. The girl followed Duke Edgar, but first she looked around. And finding Alice with her gaze, she said that she would be fine. Her friend timidly asked her to be careful. So she continued to follow Nekton to a quieter place where they could talk alone. It so happened that they found themselves on the balcony again. A lot of time had passed, Walrose, he said. What did you want? She asked, still looking at him angrily. Nekton remained silent, thinking about his own things, and, looking away, asked if she wasn't interested. Why did Lady Cheryl suddenly collapse unconscious, and she doesn't even want to ask if he had anything to do with it? It was even somehow offensive that she was not interested in him or in anything connected with him. Without waiting for an answer, Nekton replied that he didn't do anything, but rather returned it to its place. Put it back in place, she asked again, frowning and looking closely at the Duke's expression. Nekton admitted that he had brainwashed Cheryl Bournain, she thought, stunned. The spell wasn't that strong. He only hypnotized her about 3 times. Finding out everything like this wasn't the most pleasant moment. It only made me more afraid and worried. The guy continued, so her look and behavior did not stand out too much. So he means to say that Lady Bournain was hostile to her because of his hypnosis? Asked Duroy. Actually, Nekton corrected her judgment. He did not give her instructions to climb on her. To put it more precisely, he told her to love him. Madness, Duroy said, words escaping from shock. When did this start? The girl thought. Nekton, is the human mind really nonsense to him? She decided to ask him if he could really manipulate other people's feelings so easily. After a pause, he asked to be allowed to say that she was the first to try to play with him. This happened in childhood. Many children considered him a loner, so they tried to win his favor by being friendly. So they wanted to feel their superiority over him, and among them there were those who wanted to make fun of him. That, Duroy thought, was why Nekton hypnotized her. He thought it would be better that way. I also wanted to check something. Duroy tensed, her chest filled with alarm. She had completely forgotten that Lady Bournain had said something similar when she had just begun to get closer to Nekton. She didn't say anything then because she was afraid of hurting his feelings, but he knew everything himself. The realization of this fact makes his chest ache, and despite his outward calm, something in his heart gives off pain. So Nekton understood that she had become close to him for a reason. There was sadness in his words, but why was he telling her about this only now? After the conversation in the living room, he thought about many things, about the fact that he did not treat her as a special person, or about that he considers it a toy. So when she said she wanted to leave, to be honest, he was shocked by it, Walrose. After all, he didn't think so at all, Edgar admitted, and Duroy asked if he now wanted to say that she was special. Exactly, the Duke blurted out without a shred of doubt, and upon hearing this, Duroy froze in a stupor. So he would like to ask for forgiveness. Duroy thought she was special, and he wanted to ask for forgiveness. That's what she wanted to hear when she was little. Perhaps Nekton had truly thought about the situation. She sensed that behind his pain lay much more complex feelings. But on the day he apologized for what he said about Aaron, he gave her an invitation to his tea party, where he could have hurt them. This made her furious. She couldn't trust his remorse and asked, so he was going to invite the three of them to the party. His nose was stinging. He said it wouldn't happen again. He sincerely wanted to ask for forgiveness, to apologize according to her rules, not his own. He confidently said that he was ready to do whatever she wanted, and Duroy continued to ask what he was apologizing for the checks. For never having honored her with a visit, although she always went to him, it was not difficult to carry out his tasks. All he asked was to give her dear things to him, or to communicate with people she hated, pathetic, childish mockery. Valrose, Nekton called out to her, but she had no intention of finishing. She had been fed up for so many years. He's not asking for forgiveness for this, then what for? For watching Alice and Aaron? Then it's not her you need to ask, Nekton. What you want. What does he want to return so much? Duroy asked, leaning forward. Having spoken, she leaned on the railing, but due to its age, the stone cracked. Worried, Nekton told Valrose that it was dangerous, and deciding that she would not listen to him, he decided to remove his hand, saying himself that it would be better to move away from the railing. But just this one touch of the black magician was enough to make the necklace on her chest sparkle. Yes, it reacted to the black magician. Sparks seemed to burst from the decoration, directed at Nekton, who stepped back in stunned silence. But still, these sparks caught up with him. There was a crackling sound, and seeing how he bent over, Durua called out to Nekton with concern. Her heart was pounding, and Duroy thought it was a pendant, but he only touched her. She was worried that she might have hurt her friend and thought irritably, Alice, what the hell did she give her? Having defended himself from the attack of the decoration, Nekton looked at it and asked what kind of pendant it was. An oppressive silence fell. Duroy pursed her lips, admittedly ashamed. Nekton reminded her with regret. He said that he had never watched her, and never would. Piteously, and with inner pain, he riveted his gaze on her and asked if she put it on because she thought he could harm her. Her heart was beating loudly. Yes, that was precisely the reason. But as if she didn't understand, she asked what the pendant had to do with it. Her voice trembled slightly. It was just a pair of jewelry that she and Aaron wore. She didn't understand why he was suddenly alarmed. Nekton remained silent, suppressing his irritation and resentment. Okay, he said with a sigh. If it makes her more comfortable, please. No need to let her, Duroy snorted. She can handle it herself, and asked really what had come over him. Why does he call her special after so much time and say that he will fulfill her every whim? Nekton asked Duroy who she was to him and exclaimed what kind of relationship there was between them. Meanwhile, Aaron, having lost sight of Duroy, found his father and mother in the crowd. Oh, Aaron, said Mother, he looks like a fox in a suit. That's not a compliment, my dear, remarked the Duke. He looks more like a Pegasus. They hadn't spoken at all lately. Their parents were busy fulfilling their nightly orders. They were capital, and obligations could not be avoided. He was so chatty with his parents that he didn't immediately notice the noise the crowd next door was making. At the center of everything stood the main characters of the discussions, and among them, Nekton Edgar. As soon as he noticed this figure, Aaron asked him to forgive him, saying that he would step away for a minute. The father told his son that he shouldn't interfere in Duke Edgar's affairs. The father is right, said the mother, advising him to think about the honor of Lady Duroy. They would soon announce the end of their engagement, but Aaron couldn't do anything without telling them that Nekton Edgar was a mage. And suddenly the worried cries of the Count calling for Lady Cheryl were heard, and Aaron was distracted again. The crowd was buzzing, and he tried to make out what was going on there. But Claymore only made it to the end when the situation had already been resolved. However, even the fact that he saw Logix Elford and Cheryl Borneen in this way left him dumbfounded. Nekton could not answer what kind of relationship they had, so Duroy asked him not to expect that she would be flattered by his speeches. His eyes flashed. He asked Walrose what else he should do, what Rimland had told her that made her behave like this. Duroy shuddered. She knew that this was not what normal friendship looked like. They could not be called friends. Last time he said that she shouldn't show her fear towards him, but to tell the truth, she's not afraid of him. And she couldn't trust at all. She still didn't understand why he invited her to his estate, just to play with her. Alice's or Aaron's words will be worth more than his. There is no trust between them. She never knew what he was thinking and does not understand what he wants from her at all. It was all weighing on her. She leaned against the railing. She had had enough. They can't do it, she said with a sigh. The railing creaked behind her. Valrose, he cried out in alarm. Duroy looked back. Nekton's heart sank. And then the railing cracked and completely broke off behind her, and her breath caught in her chest. Duroy looked at him in horror, falling backwards. Nekton reached forward after her, alarmed. He managed to grab her, lift her up, regaining his balance, but then the suspension reacted to him again. The magician winced from the pain he received, but did not lower his hands from Valrose. "Nekton!" Duroy cried out in alarm. "Your hand!" The Duke led her back to the balcony and let her go. Duroy collapsed without strength, having lost it from fear. The stone railings behind them crashed to the ground. The pendant on Valrose's chest sparkled and suddenly broke into many pieces. They looked at it in shock, a chill running through their bodies. As the last pebble hit the floor with a clang, Duroy looked at Nekton with concern and wariness. Her heart was pounding wildly, he said. If he could convince her with words, then events would not get out of control. He asked, wanting to know what he really felt if he told her her desire to run away would only increase. She didn't understand. Nekton, who didn't let her fall despite the pain, seemed real, and he was strangely desperate. At the tea party, and then in the guest room, had he intended to harm Aaron, she asked. She was very worried when she asked this question, but Nekton answered briefly and honestly, no. The Duke explained that he does not kill people. Well, if Claymore and Rimland are so dear to her, he won't lay a finger on them. With the words, "See you, Walrose," the door clicked behind him. She watched him go, but her heartbeat did not slow down at all. Suddenly, Alice ran onto the balcony, looking for Duroy, and having found her, called out to her. Rushing to her, she asked if she was okay, if something had happened. But instead of answering, Durua simply leaned weakly on her friend's shoulder. "Durua," Alice called out to her. In all the years of their acquaintance, the trust between them never grew stronger, but despite this, it seemed she wanted to believe him. He was so cruel and did not hesitate to make threats. He gave so many reasons to doubt him. And yet Duroy wanted to trust him. Aaron kept wandering around the room trying to find where Duroy had gone. Suddenly, he noticed that the girl was standing at a distance from the celebration, looking at one point. Alice, he thought in surprise. Why was she standing there? It seemed like she was worried about something. There was someone on the terrace taking a step closer, Claymore thought. Could it really be Duroy? Alice looked behind the curtain, and Aaron thought, then Duke Edgar is there too. Damn, she could be in danger, and he didn't take his sword with him. He groaned in disappointment. But before Alice had time to spy on what was happening on the terrace, the Duke came out from there. Alice stepped back in fear. Nekton was in a bad mood. Both of them didn't know what he might do. And so they remained on guard, especially Sir Claymore. But contrary to all expectations, Nekton only looked at Alice and without saying a word, walked away. Having walked around Lady Rimland, he passed by Claymore, who, despite Alice, focused his attention on him. While Arrow was thinking about Duke Edgar, Alice slipped inside the terrace. Come to think of it, it's strange that while talking to Duroy at the Valrose estate, he kept coughing up blood due to internal injuries. But Duroy was not hurt at all. Does this mean? Aaron became wary, looking at Nekton. Is it possible? Walrose's words were spinning in his head. Why he was apologizing, that he wanted to return her so much, that she was afraid of him, that there was no trust between them. Every word lay like a burden on their shoulders. The look on her face when she asked if he had intended to hurt Aaron only added to the tension. He really is a demon child. What child wouldn't be scared when he learned his true nature? He should have let her go, he thought, but then he felt a pain in his chest, and then Nekton Edgar was called out from behind. He looked back, stunned, and he met Aaron in front of him. Claymore approached him without asking. Finally he responded, said the knight to his lordship, and explained that he had called him several times. Nekton didn't answer, and Claymore, breaking the pause, asked if he had injured his hand. This feeling, the same energy he felt from the Valrose pendant, this holy artifact had much more power than he thought. The sudden surge of divine power was comparable to the treasure of the palace. The magic in it was so abundant that just one touch was enough to activate it. It is difficult to obtain such an item for personal use. Only priests are allowed to do so, since they received it. And in the amount of 3 pieces, Aaron asked his lordship whether he had been on the terrace with Duroy. Wanting to get away from all this, Nekton replied to Sir Aaron that it was none of his business. Duroy is his bride, Aaron exclaimed. How can he not worry when she is next to him, or has he already forgotten what happened that day? Sir Aaron, Nekton tried to reason with him. He tried to be patient, but he didn't know when to stop. And he asked sarcastically why he didn't look for Alice instead of wasting his and her time. Disgusting, he pretends to be a respectable man, but gets engaged to Duroy. Although he sincerely desires another girl, he said that she is fine. Nekton didn't remember colliding with Rimland, didn't remember anything about leaving the terrace, so she saw everything. That's the problem. They were in the royal garden all alone. He advised him to leave before he lost his patience. Aaron asked what would happen if he disobeyed. "What?" asked the Duke, and Aaron explained to his lordship that he could not harm him, but if he thought otherwise, he could try. While the guys were arguing, testing each other's patience, Alice tried to calm Duroy down. The stress had thrown Valrose off balance, and Alice worriedly asked Duroy if she was okay. But suddenly Duroy came to her senses, looked at her friend in surprise, and recoiled from her. She thought with fear, "Oh no, was she crying? If someone saw her in such a state, they would definitely spread rumors. She needs to get back to the ballroom. She can't miss the ruler's birthday. What should she do? Her eyes must be swollen." After crying, she laughed awkwardly, and Alice asked if she would like to use her handkerchief. "No, it's not necessary. She has her own," Duroy answered, but suddenly remembered Alice's pendant. The girl gasped in surprise and said that everything was fine. She hadn't expected much from this stone. But she couldn't believe it. She had gone through so much to get it, and the pendant had broken from simple contact with the Duke. "What happened?" she asked. Duroy answered. They had a fight, although she had not deliberately tried to irritate him. And at that moment the railing suddenly collapsed. Nekton pulled her towards him, and at that moment the light of the crystal struck him. "He only touched her?" Alice asked. "Yes." Nekton even hurt his hand in an attempt to keep her from falling. "The crystal's glow coincided with his injury?" Alice asked. "She wasn't hurt. No, there wasn't a scratch on Darua. But it was strange. She didn't think the crystal would manifest itself from a simple touch. She had only heard that it protected against mind control and hypnosis. Then why did the white crystal attack Nekton? Duroy thought. Alice said that these pendants are worth a fortune. Could she have been deceived? The girls were just wondering when they noticed a silhouette, but who was it there? He was 15 years old and still alive, one of the sons of Duchess Edgar. Nekton Edgar. Now the number of those who admire his abilities exceeds the number of those who mock him. It has already been tacitly decided that he will be the next Duke Edgar, but what is even more worrying is Pastia Edgar's unusual inaction. The sudden incitement of a calm horse into a state of frenzy in order to knock him, the rider, down, is just a small prank by one of its servants. So he didn't expect her to call him into her office after such a minor incident. He entered his mother's office, but she was still busy with paperwork. Duchess Pastia Edgar, Nekton's mother, heard that he fell from his horse today. When her son did not respond, the woman continued, and was told that he had injured his ankle. "It's not the first time the horses under him have gone crazy," Nekton quipped. "It's just that his skills aren't perfect yet, although his brothers have never fallen off a horse." She chuckled. "And she didn't know?" he asked. Nekton clearly felt a slight irritation and disgust inside the Duchess's heart. Prelude had been kicked in his time, Nekton noted, and Danza had also been unable to stay in the saddle in the past. She despised him, but she didn't particularly like her other children either. She was just curious why they couldn't surpass him. Nekton asked his mother why she called him. The woman handed him a bottle and asked him to pour it on his wound. His heart sank. It was holy water. He felt lousy, but said there was no point in wasting holy water on all sorts of scratches. If things don't get better today, he'd better call a priest. But water would work better than a priest, she insisted, and asked, "He is the young master of the ducal house, isn't he?" "There is nothing more valuable in this world than the body," said the mother. Nekton knew that holy water was harmful to him, but he still went forward to get some water. One touch of holy water will cause pain. He couldn't even imagine the pain he would experience if this liquid got on his wound. The woman chuckled, and then burst into loud, restless laughter at her son. She probably guessed that he was using black magic. Nekton fidgeted. And despite all the precautions, he knew that one day the truth would come to the surface, but he didn't think it would be so soon. This was supposed to happen when he gained strength. The Duchess asked what he was waiting for. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Why this persistence? It's all so strange." She had never taught him how to hold a sword, and yet he had held out for so long, his tone almost threatening. "Like an annoying insect," she said, coming closer, and then sharply snatched up the holy water. She was glad that his talent for judgment was a dark art that everyone avoided so much. She splashed holy water directly onto her injured leg. It started to hurt, not immediately, but steadily increasing. The woman laughed mockingly, and indeed she is a demon's child, she said sadistically. Nekton was in pain, a lot, but despite all this he tried not to show how strong the pain was. Did he also seduce Lady Duroy with his tricks? The mother asked with a grin. Nekton's breath and even his heartbeat seemed to stop at the mention of his friend. The woman, laughing, thought the answer was obvious, and asked if this child would not be afraid of him if he knew his true nature. Why would she stay around unless she was bewitched by his vile magic? "She is a sweet girl, isn't she?" asked the Duchess. A sweet face and eyes filled with brightness, like those of a small animal. The family of the Marquis of Valrose is highly respected. Nekton pricked up his ears. And, she continued, it just so happened that she was looking for a suitable passion for prelude. The boy faltered. Inside Nekton, everything was boiling with hatred for his mother. He was ready to tear her apart right there on the spot. She is still young, but in 4 years she will become an adult. But then Nekton froze, remembering the words of Valrose. Don't kill anyone or anything, no matter what, he promised and remembered this oath. This promise given to Walrose was the reason why he did not kill anyone. She is the one who gives as much good as she receives. So she will let a little hypnosis go unpunished, but because of her strong sense of justice, she will never forgive him for destroying someone's consciousness. There was no need to stare at him like that. She was only choosing the best for everyone, advising him to give her up before he ruined an innocent creature. From that day on, the Duchess began to do something strange during their meals. She heard that there was a group of people manipulating the minds of others. The servants poured a glass of holy water for each family member. I thought it wouldn't hurt to protect myself from their influence, so I took measures for Edgar's house. The Duchess's husband, Edgar Granium, examined his wife, and then the glass of holy water. And without any ulterior motive, he drank it while the man's son watched. But she doesn't know that a few drops of holy water won't harm him. His condition worsened day by day. It felt as if holy water was already flowing through his veins. It burned inside, but even so, he was in far less danger than he had ever been. He fidgeted in bed, his clothes clinging to his body with sweat. He had enchanted the doors of his bedroom so that anyone who approached would lose the desire to enter the room. And even if they try, they will turn away right at the threshold without even realizing that they have been enchanted. After the Duchess saw the destructive effect of water, she began to treat everyone to it at the end of every dinner. Despite the enormous cost of the undertaking, she poured it out generously, as if the price did not matter. It was unpleasant, to say the least, but ironically, it slowly led to him developing an immunity to holy water. He even managed to get to the point where he could think about something else while drinking, but the Duchess didn't seem happy with the outcome. His father and brothers noticed the Duchess's strange behavior, but no one dared to go against the undisputed authority on the estate. It just so happened that she was looking for a suitable passion before prelude. Remembering these words, Nekton shuddered. In just 4 years she will become an adult, as if her mother had pronounced the sentence. He told Walrose not to come into the house for a while so nothing bad should happen. The engagement can only take place between those who have reached the age of majority, so she is not in any danger in her own estate. The door quietly opened, almost weightless steps approached, and suddenly a hand fell on the forehead. Frightened, Nekton jumped up in bed and grabbed his hand as if something was threatening him, squeezing it. Looking at the face, Nekton asked in shock. Valrose, the girl, was taken aback. Because he stood up quickly, he now staggered and bowed his head. "Nekton," she called out to him worriedly. He asked her embarrassedly why she came, but he told her not to show up. "Sorry," she apologized guiltily. She was told that she could come to him, that's why she's here. She wanted to give him this book, a copy of the one she accidentally damaged, probably referring to the ancient texts that Walrose threw into the lake. And she also heard that he was ill. He could not believe that she came for such a banal reason, when it was unknown what the Duchess would do. He was shaking, Duroy noted worriedly. She shouldn't have come when he was in such a state, and apologized. But Nekton looked with concern at the redness of Valrose's hand, which he himself had caused. "Oh, and don't worry," she asked, laughing and removing her hand. After all, it was she who scared him. The girl then pressed on the Nekton's shoulders, laying him back on the bed. Nekton was embarrassed, his cheeks turned red. He felt strange. There was a pain in his chest. Nausea was rising in his throat. He called out to Walrose. "Oh!" His voice was already hoarse. She suggested that he keep quiet, Nekton thought. This is a normal feeling during illness. She didn't want to disturb the sick man, so she'd better go, Duroy said modestly. But then there was a knock at the door. A spell cast on a door loses its effectiveness the moment the door is opened. The spell was broken when Walrose came in. Nekton was horrified to see his mother enter the room. Stop, he thought, looking at his friend with alarm. Just as Valrose got here? The Duchess asked for forgiveness for having to leave her, Lady Duroy. Leave? Asked Nekton. Oh, her ladyship treated her to tea when she came in, but left after the butler said that her help was needed in the lesson. The Duchess smiled and said that she had settled all urgent matters. Come to think of it, she somehow completely forgot to visit her sick son. My poor thing, the woman exclaimed for show. How sickly you are. Nekton twitched. Your Grace, interrupted the Duchess of Duroy. The woman asked Lady Walrose what was wrong. Well, Duroy said nervously, it seems Nekton is not feeling well today. She thought it would be better to let him sleep. You know, she said, sick people are often very irritable. The Duchess hesitated with her answer, but she soon agreed she was definitely right. But this was no reason to leave a guest alone with a bedridden patient. It's okay. She was just about to leave. It's absurd, said the Duchess. It's impolite. Besides, she wanted to discuss one issue. He's a family man, but I'd like to hear her opinion. What she thinks about, Mom. Nekton snorted irritably. He needs to talk to Valrose and ask to leave. Go out. The woman asked, My son, how can you talk so coldly to your mother? She even brought holy water. As soon as she said this, a servant entered the room. What? Nekton thought in horror. Good, said Duchess Edgar. She does not want to disturb the sick man. Nekton pursed his lips, and his mother said that her question to Lady Duroy could wait. She will leave as soon as he drinks the water. The woman came closer, asking to take the glass. His heart was pounding. No, he couldn't drink her in this state. He couldn't believe that she was trying to harm him in front of Walrose. And if he gets even worse from the water, what will she think of him? Nekton worried. It seems he doesn't even have the strength to hold the glass, seeing the child's indecision, she said. And indeed the child was a demon, and the Duchess asked Lady Duroy if she would be so kind as to help him, and Duroy asked, Help with what? Excuse me? The girl asked warily. I need help. With what? She asked, looking at her friend's mother in bewilderment. Nekton frowned. Help him drink, shaking the glass of holy water, the mother said sadistically. It's not necessary, Walrose, the boy said worriedly. He's not well enough to decide, his mother replied. Lady Duroy can give him a drink instead of her, or he can drink it himself, she asked. So from whose hands will he drink the holy water? Nekton tensed up and clenched his teeth, his expression darkening. He was infuriated by this whole situation and thought that she left him no choice. Come on, the mother said, forcing the child to choose, but then Nekton's spell overtook her body. The next moment the gaze dropped and the Duchess froze. Mom, he said with a commanding tone and effort, don't waste the water, just take it away. Yes, he is right. She suddenly became accommodating and asked Lady Duroy to return the glass. Duroy handed it back without question. What just happened? Duroy asked in shock. There is no turning back now. When the Duchess finds out that she has been hypnotized, she will immediately try to kill her. And hypnosis alone won't be enough. We'll have to break her mind to survive. That promise turned out to be a much bigger hindrance than Nekton expected. Pity, guilt, resentment, or hatred. What kind of feeling is this? He did not understand what was happening to him and asked Walrose to leave. But he was afraid that after this day Valrose would never return. But then something slammed next to him. What she, having risen, tried to ask Nekton, and Duroy, interrupting, said, She wants to stay. Duroy informed Nekton that she would stay at least until he fell asleep. She advised him not to try to drive her out. She would come back anyway. Nekton slipped under the blanket and called out to Walrose. If he really wanted her to leave, she should get better, he thought. She didn't even like reading ancient texts. Nekton remembered the promise he had given and felt embarrassed, he knew. He knew that this did not mean that he could not only kill. He frowned, but perhaps he would have an excuse for any bad actions until he crossed the line. He wanted to keep his promise to Walrose at any cost. Walrose, Walrose, Walrose. Alice didn't think that the crystal would attack from simple contact. She had only heard that it protected against mental attacks, hypnosis, curses. But then why did the crystal react, Darua thought. Out of the corner of their eye they noticed a shadow behind the terrace curtains, and startled, Duroy asked who was there. A familiar figure opened the door. Claymore said it was him, Aaron, and asked if he could join. The ball was cancelled. His Majesty suddenly fell ill. It is not surprising that the Emperor's family arrived so late, said Duroy. They closed themselves off from the surroundings, so they didn't notice anything at all. Aaron doubted it, but still asked about the issue they wanted to resolve. She asked not to worry. Alice already knows that they wanted to break off the engagement. Alice apologized to Aaron. It was she who asked. Although Darua also felt guilty about telling the story, everything is fine, the knight replied. In general, for now, he thought that they should wait with this, which Darua asked, frowning. 2 weeks after Nekton drank the holy water in the drawing room, Aaron and she began discussing breaking off their engagement. He didn't want to keep it a secret. It was better to say it straight out. Even if it was too late, Duroy said that she would support any decision he made. But despite this, he asked to be taken with him as his partner to social events until the issue with Duke Edgar was resolved. But this will only create more rumors. People will start wondering why they broke up in the first place. He asked why she cared about other people's opinions. Sometimes it seemed to him that she was so worried about gossip that she was completely exhausted. Yes, she asked in surprise. It seems like everyone is worried about rumors. But perhaps he was right, she thought. It was because of her indirect experience with Nekton. Having become closer to him, she became a witness to all the negativity that circled around his personality. Nekton didn't seem to care much about them, but over time she involuntarily began to pay more attention to the opinions of those around her. I just couldn't help but worry about him, and at the same time I couldn't shake the feeling that one day their gossip would touch her too. She wouldn't say they were friends at all. She didn't think Nekton perceived her that way. And yet, she couldn't cut off communication with him, so they simply stood next to each other, not as friends, but not as strangers either. And what about her, Duroy? Aaron asked, if she considered him her friend, but she wasn't sure what she thought of him. Now, standing on the terrace of the palace, she thought about this conversation, and when Aaron called out to her, she came to her senses. Walrose let out a worried sigh and apologized nervously, thinking for a moment. Whatever the reason for wanting to postpone this matter, I hoped he wouldn't say that he couldn't give a reason. He has this little sin he always speaks in riddles and then refuses to explain his thoughts. True, Alice asked, laughing, just like that. She remembered her lover and suddenly froze. Aaron promised that he would stop doing this and asked to forget what he said. Alice said that everything was fine. She just remembered someone with a similar habit. Either not paying attention or changing the subject, Aaron said that he had recently met Duke Edgar. Alice became wary, and Aaron explained that nothing special had happened. He just wanted to check something. He will explain in detail once he gets to the truth, but he will say that he will achieve great results if they keep the engagement for now. If he wants to be sure of something regarding Nekton, then he should know something about him. He is a dark magician. She told Alice that the Duke was coughing up blood. That was true, but Duroy did not understand why he drank it. Alice was scared. She didn't want to die. Something had to be done. Poor thing, Duroy thought. Even if it was just a dream, it was probably scary to see yourself being killed. But why was she killed at all, according to the novel? Nekton would have preferred her to be alive. Now she remembered the whole story, but still didn't understand anything. Nekton broke off his engagement with Alice and was no longer interested in power. Instead, he was obsessed with her.